Ben, can we hear you? How you doing? And KS, are you there?
I am.
All right, excellent. So, welcome to the show. How's it been?
It's been. It's been. It's
And
been.
do you want to
Uh,
introduce yourself a little bit? Like, I guess, maybe.
Not really, actually. No.
Yeah, that's
I
fair.
hate that kind of thing.
Well, so let's just make you this enigma. You're a guy I know who talks about mud flood and Tartaria and have for longer than most people that do it on the internet. But you kind of keep it to your own group of people. It's kind of a because it's the kind of thing that people aren't ready for a lot of the time. But I think because of that, you've also gone further with it than a lot of people who've had to go back to explain it to other people. So I kind of wanted to like get your take on some of this stuff and yeah, is there anything you want to add about your interests in some of this stuff?
Yeah, I haven't touched it for a good while. I only when I mentioned it to you back then,
Right.
it was just because I didn't think anyone had looked into it yet. But I didn't really look much more into it. But I do watch Martin Leed's videos.
Right. Yeah.
That's the only things I still watch about it. But that's
Right.
pretty deep too.
Well, that's a good thing because a lot of people are like they think it's this total crazy thing that all of a sudden we're mentioning this place, but it goes back pretty far. I mean, I'm trying
Oh
to
yeah.
think about all the times I've heard about it and just was told not to think about it, which is pretty weird if you think of it's like you've never heard of this thing, but if you ever do, it's crazy and magical and nonsense. So just in case, it's like why would they warn you about something like that? Very
Yeah.
strange. What are some
And
of the things you remember that are some of the earliest like touching of this point of Tartary or the mud flood or specifically Tartary?
I kind of came into it because of the manipulation of which year we are living in and all that, and then I fell over some old documents and someone, I don't remember who. Then I looked into old documents, and then I fell over some comment about Tartaria, and I don't even remember who or what it was. And then I just started to look into the age, and that made sense to me when I listened to New Earth, New Earth and her videos. She talks a lot about the age, the timeline has been manipulated, and they added on like around 1,000 years to the history, something
Right.
like
So
that.
that was another thing. So the phantom time hypothesis I've seen shift over my lifetime from, months to years to decades to centuries to now about a millennia. And it's interesting that time keeps collapsing. I'm wondering, what do you think about that? And when was your first introduction to the idea of the phantom time hypothesis or any amount of missing time?
Wow. You know, I didn't think much about it, but it's just I always thought that something's weird about technology. That how the speed technology keeps changing, and how fast it goes, and knowing that they are way more ahead than they pretend to be. That we only get crap and they got something very serious. Laying around. I don't know, man. But when I fell over that stuff with the 1,000 in 1,900 or whatever, the one being an I and not even a one, and they just changed the I into a one to fake history, because people didn't remember the timeline anyway, and they just said that now this is how we write it these days, and those no, they said that's how they wrote it back then. The I was just a one. It was just a different way of writing it, but that makes no sense because you see so many documents with J's too.
Right.
J
Yeah. The use of the in our Lord, and it's kind of funny that like that's just now becoming such a big thing. But that's the thing
and
we've people
even
talked
an
about it.
X. They even use an X somewhere in the world, instead of the
Hmm.
I and the J.
Yeah. But so that's kind of weird because back in the early 2000s there was like the flamenco new chronology shows were really popular, right next to other conspiracy videos on Google Video. I think it was like before YouTube was really, I remember seeing them on the Google Video, and you just look for long videos and you'd find this stuff. But, you know, I mean, it seemed kind of crazy back then, even. I mean, that it was like this Russian guy was talking about how, you know, time has been lied to. I totally got the feeling that people feel or felt that it was some sort of, especially because they're saying, because, you know, rather syllogistically, that if it's not like it is, then it never happened, which is not very logical. There's probably something there that's not exactly the same, but it's not that history is not there. So, I mean, that was kind of my introduction to it, but I kind of let it go for a long time, because why?
Oh yeah.
You know, like who would want to, like, I mean, there's so much stuff else to fill your head with. So it's like, okay, so now there's missing time, and that just seems nuts, because it's like,
Oh
so
yeah,
you want to discard all the stuff, but you
my
don't get
point
that
was. Sorry.
no, I was gonna say is you just don't get that there's other stuff there, and you're like, okay, it wasn't that there wasn't the Dark Ages, it's that there was the Bright Ages, you know.
Chaos, are you eating, or is that my cabling coming through?
I don't know. I'm not eating.
Chaos. All right. Well, anyway.
That must be KS. KS is like Fight
Continue,
Club
man.
style or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. Continue. I'll be with you in a sec.
Yeah.
Let me switch this to the other screen. I'm also going to check and see what some of the messages from people have been so far when we started this video. Oh gosh, so much stuff. Thank you, guys. Whoa. Havala. I mean, thank you to the Love of Creation Ministries. That is just fantastic. I appreciate you. Anything you want us to talk about, let us know, obviously. So we were going to talk down this idea of a single race, a single culture. I mean, I really think that that's kind of missing the point. It's more about but if you really want to get into that, then that's more into the Blavatsky thing. And it's the question of whether you believe that there are a number of different simultaneous hominids that have become a singularity or are becoming a singularity. Yeah, Blavatsky.
Oh
right.
man, oh man. Yeah, I didn't even know she covered that. All right, but you know, Atlantis, during the time of Atlantis, there was 2 races and 2 civilizations. So if in the intervening time, you know, people essentially, you know, interbred and became one race, that would explain a whole lot.
That is the theosophical school of thought.
I know,
and
I
I'm
think
not trying to like.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to promote, by the way, like, because I feel like people think I'm not revealing stuff. It's not because I don't mean to. And anything you want to ask me about, the Lucis Trust, Alice Bailey and Foster Bailey started the Lucis Trust, which was originally the Lodge of the Grand Orient, or the Tibetan Grand Lodge, I believe. And the Lucis Trust, I hope you can like look into that word. But the Grand Invocation of the UN is actually because of the Theosophical Society. We'll get into the Theosophical Society, because they're kind of like a lot of guys who said they didn't want to be Masons anymore to their dads got into the Theosophical Society. So they are.
It came before the First World War, and it was hugely influential on especially Germany and the Axis powers.
Yeah, I mean,
for some reason we call them the Axis.
Well, and then the rooted connection between the Rosicrucians and the Theosophists also is sort of like the connection between the Church of Satan and the Temple of Set. It's just sort of like a
out in
rebranding. Yeah, and then that gets into Jack Parsons. God, I really am gonna have to make a video about that. But but you were talking about Blavatsky's thing with the races and the 7 root races.
Yeah, well, okay, so she's the one who explained all that. I'm
essentially
rusty on my theosophical,
yes.
Here, but
so basically at the same time as Darwin. So this is kind of one interesting thing. Is like Edmonston's friend and student, and more probably went off on this trip at the same time, or like ships in the night with Blavatsky, and they ended up like discovering at the same time this idea. And it's interesting that they don't talk this much about the dinosaur bird thing that Darwin kind of figured, kind of the opening up of that comes from that same time. But simultaneously, there's this theory emerging that the Leviathans are the continents, the oceans drained, and the leftovers are these, the two races are of Mu, the Lemurians, and the Moors, right? Or they're a separate race which have wide eyes and they're large and they're kind of almost insectoid, I believe. But there's different theories, and then there's also the humanoids, and they call them the noble race. And the noble race, the word Aryan, but that's not the same as Nordic, by the way.
Yeah, I know.
So people confuse that because the connection to the 19th century is just that with Germany.
The entire Nordic tradition, society, people that came after the Aryan migration happened like a long time before, like probably.
The Nordic people is the descendants of the Aryans.
They made it all the way.
They are the human children of whatever. They're the closest thing to that genetic pool.
The views and expressions held by the guests of Xirtus do not necessarily represent
well, we
those
look
of
pretty much the same as they did.
I think
we're just not as tall.
I think that is a thing that's kind of an interesting point that a lot of people make about this idea that there was a mixture between highly sexual people on one spectrum of the humanoids and less sexual, but maybe more intelligent, but then also less strong, and then another group that were very strong but less intelligent. And this way they were able to move different parts, and this is very primordial, but it's the idea that it made them rely on working together in a system by default, or else they wouldn't be able to at first function. And this is a theory and it's speculatory, but you look into how evolution is like kind of crossed over. I mean, and that is, again, what Blavatsky was saying, was that eventually we're mixing all of the parts together to unlock parts of the DNA. And again, I mean, part of the UN,
the goal
and so
of
kind of a conspiracy, but it's one of the schools of thought that's very influential.
Andreas.
Which one's that?
There's a big point if you wanted me to jump in on
this. This is the time. I was actually thinking about.
I got an afternote too.
I want to bring in our game theory expert John, and he's going to be someone we're going to be doing an entire thing on probably Monday, hopefully. But we're going to be talking a lot about what happened when the Vanderbilts were holding the poker cards and trading railroad track stock. You know what I'm saying?
For 150 years, roughly. I mean, they were like the first real rich family in America.
And that's just a metaphor for how much more game theory really matters in terms of metaphysics. But now I've introduced you, John. Please say more about yourself than I have.
Just been a philosopher my whole life. Wanted to kind of stay out of religion, stay out of the religious limelight, and just be a student or an archivist, kind of like an archivist Jedi or something like that. But, never actually went to school and educated myself. But now I'm in school. I'm at UW for a certificate in game design, and, really starting to open up, my knowledge stream as far as, my philosophical studies in religion and religious, studies, just religious history, and relating the game theory of that, I'm learning to this, background of history that I've so enjoyed to be a part of, Birthright and all that.
Yeah, and you've been doing some interesting studies. Like, I guess you've been playing game theory in school. Like today, what was going on today? You were telling me you did some mischievous shit. Excuse me. Was it?
It wasn't today. It was this week. But my teacher mentioning casino gambling and how people wear diapers to sit at a station and they don't give it up because they play 48 hours just to get the one win that they know they're going to get from a machine, and if they spend a certain amount of money playing for 48 hours, whereas they don't want to give up their stool. And that's kind of what I said afterwards. And he said, "Oh, I don't want to have to send you to the principal's office."
Shit.
And then, it was like, that's his active communication way of saying, don't fucking do that.
They don't want to give up their stool. They're going to smell like...
But you wanted to bring up a point about the Lemurian Atlantis, Utopia 1? Utopia 0?
In the sense of some things that you mentioned, whenever you have a compact grid form where you have the fantasy tales of the past, where you have all these non-human races and whatnot existing at one point. You know, everything existed in that way, in that functional society. You know, where everything was what back then was considered
The
perfect.
Lord of the Rings.
It's Lord of the Rings, and you know, magic and all that technology mixed together, so that technology seems like magic. You know, it all worked in a unique way, as is described with the Skinner experiment, and that is the ground basis for, you know, once there was a transition that was made, and we called ourselves human, you know, in the form that we are in now. Whatever you know, pre-linear existences that we had before, you know, other human forms that we're in now have been called monsters.
So do you want to explain really quickly the Skinner experiment? And
Are you talking BF
The Skinner box. The Skinner box basically, you know, was put on to, you know, prove that if you gave animals more than they consistently needed to eat, that they would take advantage of it.
if
and
they
they
were
were-
alone and they had
If they
no
were,
friends.
yes, they had, if they had no outside, um, uh, uh,
If they were depressed and lonely.
yeah,
What was-
if
what was-
they're completely
was
isolated,
the-
and
what was the maze experiment, the park experiment? What was
John.
that called? Where they found out this experiment only works if the rat has nothing else to do. I mean, of course he'll do drugs if he's alone. But if you give him a pool and a slide,
But
just
not
some other
even
rats
that.
to play with,
but
he'll
not
basically
even
leave
that,
it alone.
not even that, it will not deviate from its projected path. And that's what the
John.
Skinner experiment discovered, is that, you know, everything has its place on this planet, and you can't force it to be different.
Wait, are you saying that
We had no right to.
the
We have a-
Skinner
we-
experiment showed that the rat would have fun if he could have fun overdoing drugs? That's that experiment?
I'm having network problems.
It just roams and roams and roams. The Skinner box was a unique thing then to the maze experiment. The maze experiment will show that it'll roam as long as it has a goal.
Yeah,
If there's no goal, it just sits there.
right.
No.
And that's the big question mark, is, you know, that's why they're
Oh.
so very, very useful in
So give humanity goals.
in feedback based experiments. Scientists use them in laps of a human judgmental pool. So whereas paying humans to give you the judgmental pool that you need, they go to rats who they don't have to pay anything to, and they have to feed them like specks of dust basically to keep them up.
Have you read Batman Book of the Dead?
Everything is game theory to scientists, is what I'm saying. You know,
Look at the Egyptian thing in the background on the wall there.
That's
Yeah,
a true
the things-
statement. It's not just scientists, it's economists.
well,
it's
to me, the way that I was born, the way that my mind works, is this is how I think about everything. You know, within the past 20 minutes, I've been able to create, you know, what is a mathematical structure of going from a non-human state, in this case Lord of the Rings, which starts you off at a duo quadrant grid, where you have a -1 experience, which would lead to their version of heaven, which would be
Hey,
1.
John.
And then but from there you have what we consider a break, and it breaks into a
John.
quadrant grid, and then
Real quick, explain the concept of sums. You know, zero sum, positive sum. Just because you were talking about plus, you know, plus one.
the
experience.
+1 and
So
-1.
people are clued in.
I really have a hard time with that math,
Okay,
and
cool.
that's what I was
Right.
hoping
Yeah,
you could help
Ben,
with.
maybe you could say it
Yeah.
pretty good.
Game theory is basically it revolves around the idea that every action has a consequence that can be measured numerically. So one of the oldest examples of how this field developed was from the 1950s through 80s, when they had the Cold War. They had you know, apocalypse, you know, total destruction. It was called mutually assured destruction. So they said that you want to maximize amounts of your
points, your sum. You want to have the highest sum possible. So you have two players, U.S. versus Russia. They both have nuclear weapons, and they have enough nukes to destroy the entire planet. So move 1 is America does a nuclear first strike. That gives you a +1. Move 2 is Russia gets a first strike. So +1 to Russia and -1 to America. But if neither one strikes and they disarm, they decommission, then you get a +2 because they both win, they both survive. So the only solution in that particular game is to not play it, for both to make a treaty.
And hopefully
So
everyone's seen war games where they talk about that. But I think that's actually the funny thing about these presuppositions is like really the work answers that's false. The real answer is to play out every simulation in order to find that out.
Right.
You have to simulate that a million times, and then you
it's
prove
simulating
Yeah.
theory scenarios. So I hope I didn't make you lose your train of thought.
because
So-
proof
change
is the most ultimate thing, and it's worth risking millions of lifetimes in
Yeah,
the simulations.
You see
you
the
know.
tic-tac-toe on the left? That's also the same thing. Like, your goal is to get a +3. If you end up with a +2 and the other player gets a +3, you lose. If they all both get a +2, neither one makes a complete straight line, 1, 2, 3, then it's a tie. So there's a winner, loser, or a tie in almost every game.
Yeah, and that got me into a thought earlier.
Or
You're talking about the
Yeah,
connection.
but there really is no real winners or losers. There are only ties.
Well, only
That's what people don't realize in the mathematical sense. In the finite sense, there's no win and lose.
but
there
that's
is-
part of that. Well, we were talking about the omnivore's dilemma, where
John, you talk about what's called infinite games, I believe.
Yeah.
We're in an infinite game. With an infinite game, there's never a winner or loser. The goal is just to keep the game going.
Just keep it going.
mutual exploitation.
Can't win.
So-
There's no end.
So there's a concept that you feel like you're getting something because you're taking it from someone else. So it's this feeling of mutual exploitation, and and this is not,
There is a literal mathematical dominating strategy between becoming from a non-human state and traveling into a human state. However, there is because we were non-human once and we're becoming not because we're becoming human, there is a bounding strategy, meaning a strategy that stands against the current strategy, which is not to say that humanity is not a dominating strategy, which it is. Actually is mathematically, it is in a in a sense that you're not here. And I hate to say act like I'm all Buddhist and all, because I'm not, but in the sense that you are not where you are now, but you are where you are going.
well, so this is like, I wanted to bring in this thing actually because of that. When you're talking about this idea that the multiple human races are missing something so they can evolve into a thing together or into separate things using different hybridization techniques. But this cultural hybridization is in the Book of the Dead, the Batman Book of the Dead, rather. And it's a pretty good comic book series. And it's one of the ones that's kind of forgotten about. It's an Elseworld. And I've been looking for my copy, and I'm sure I lent it to someone by accident. I'm going to try to see what I can do. But basically, the idea is they find Batman is the missing piece in all, like, they have 4 gold coins that are like, the size of tables, and they're all missing one corner. And when they all touch together, there's a bat symbol right in the middle. And there's a missing god from all of their cultures, which is the bat god, except from one culture where they didn't lose that piece. And so they find that piece, and it connects them to the bat god, who helped the ancient Egyptians, who are these aliens, of course, in this comic book, from Saturn, right? These UFOs that look like Saturn come down, build the pyramids.
Serious.
Yeah, and then Batman's god has to stay back in the temple, and he's forgotten. And the Anubis Horus myth and everything, it's all in it. It's super great. But it goes as far as to say the planet's slowing down, and that the magnets of the temples from the Utopia 1 project caused, the Ice Age and the flipping of the poles. And this is like 1989 or something. I mean, I read it when I was a
That's the
kid in
year
the
before,
90s,
but,
but it's
oh my
older than I
God.
am, I think.
You're also same age as me, probably.
Yeah,
Dude,
there's
incredible. Well, I can understand why that bats for God. I mean, they come from the underworld. Like they live in caves. You don't see them. They have superhuman abilities. You know, they have echolocation. They just come out all at once. And it's like crazy. You ever saw that movie? Damn it, it's not Perfect Black. I know it's got Vin Diesel in it. It's like about this planet with 3 suns. And it only gets dark one time in 1,000 years.
oh yeah, Pitch Black or whatever it's
Pitch
called.
Black.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
actually
You get
right
those
now.
bats.
I'm actually going to include some stuff about the Riddick Chronicles and Pitch Black in the sci-fi thing I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And I wanted to introduce something really quickly because we were talking about this, which is like, I just saw this article about Moby, and so Moby basically admitted that his CIA friends had given him information, and he didn't like what they had said, so he came out to the public and said that the government had given him information to say. But what's interesting about that is he admits basically that they've been doing it in the past, and just now all of a sudden he's no longer aligned or whatever with the current establishment.
Yeah,
So
that's what
he's
the
now.
thing was. Same
So
thing.
there's a lot to be said about these psyops and free agents like Agent Moby, and like how baseball agents, and free agents are eligible to sign with any club. You know, I think that that's a big. I'm gonna get more into it, but I think that that is a real thing. You know, and we're looking into like the current use of MK Ultra. It's like that. You know, so yeah, something to be considering is when we're talking about television movies. It's like a lot of this stuff is, you know, like Southland Tales. We're gonna have to do something about.
Real quick, so I've listened to a lot of Moby. I don't mention this, but I used to be really into music. So KS here on the call, he's probably one of the most well versed in movies and music that I've ever met, and there's a lot that he can break down. Like I don't think we can play it, but you know that song you played for me in Junior the other day, the rap song. You should leave a link to that.
Which one?
It's like 3 of them. One of them was wasn't 50 Cent. Who was it? Who's the one that died? Got shot?
I think Winnie Pax.
Tupac Shakur. And that's
Oh, the Tupac song.
Down. Yeah, well, there's a couple of them. But
I played one Tupac song, and then a couple of songs from Winnie.
Bring out a lot of information. I mean, like.
Oh yeah, that was the Winnie Pax songs, because the other one was just Tupac singing a Lucifer song or something.
Well, the one that they were singing about, like the world thing. Okay, that was probably.
That was Winnie Pax.
Okay, Winnie Pax.
Someone just said that you had to admit listening to Moby. It's like this is where we're at in 2019.
It's
like
surreal, but I didn't like that Moby and like.
This is the McCarthy Moby trials, you know.
I haven't listened to them since 2011.
I got into when the free music came out. He uploaded a bunch of music you could make your own music out of. Of course, you know, ethically was you know, what are you gonna do? But KS, that's actually a good point. Maybe we should talk about is some of the side stuff that leads up to like the Postman and, you know, any of these mud flood stories like Waterworld. Like, what do you?
Freaking Waterworld, Jesus! You know that's the most expensive movie set ever made.
At the time,
that is my favorite movie.
You love it, Waterworld or Postman? I like the Postman slightly better.
Both of them.
They're so long.
Basically the social restart, you know, storyline. You know, the not so much the mystery, because I've gotten multiple bad report grades from school because I've chosen, just for choosing those movies, my teachers, you know, they rained down horrible frenzy of disgust and you know, distemperament, you know, and took it out on my grade. It took it out of my grade nonetheless, which is just like,
maybe
it didn't have anything to do with the content of my material. It had everything to do with my choice of topic.
Maybe that time space is shifting, and the fact that they never had a finished script for that movie when they started shooting it is related, man. You never know. I mean, Probably not. But.
Yeah, I guess you could explain better than I can how the whole intellectual property type of debate is different in the part of the world that you're in. So you'll have access to a lot more stuff. You know, here in America, if we want to see something and we don't have the money for it, we use like torrent networks or something like that. But you'll have like VPSs and FTP file services. It's crazy. It's awesome.
Yeah, I mean they've got you got to use the Kodi to do the live streams, man. I don't know if they're gonna be pushing stuff.
Dude, I'm switching. Like I'm fed up with Chrome and all. And I got hacked on Chrome.
But okay, so let's do something. I guess recently, Flat Earth British was talking. Martin was talking about the EMF and some of the mud flood stuff that happened in the 1600s or the 1300s.
Or so they say.
So they say. I think we just call these we should start using the terms dynasties again. You know,
I would like us to just put an I in front of the number instead of saying 1,000. Because that is how it was back then, you know. So whatever that meant or means, it's not 1,000.
You know,
right.
If you watch the last scene, the closing scene of Prometheus, Dr. What's the girl's name?
I don't remember.
Dr. Amanda something? No, I don't remember. But she says, like, in the year of our Lord, you know...
Shaw.
Amanda Shaw. I was going to say that, but there's, like, Amanda Shaw in Louisiana is a violinist. Yeah. Yeah. Check out, if anyone hasn't watched the movie Prometheus, or if you don't like that genre, watch the ending with the spaceship. I'm not going to spoil it, but it's a giant U-shaped spaceship. It's like a horseshoe.
Yeah, this one, there it is. This thing. Yeah.
Oh yeah, you showed it all.
Let's see. The other thing I wanted to, or I wasn't even showing it. My bad. Sorry, guys. Wasn't doing the screen share properly. Go back to it if you want to see.
Oh, we were looking at Geomark.
Ooh, there it goes. Should we check the comments chat?
Yeah, let's do a comment check real quick. Anybody want to do some questions with us about any of the mud flood stuff that we can answer?
Oh, you know, one last thing. Does that at all remind you of an Ouroboros loop?
Yeah, I mean, it's the snake eating its tail.
I wonder if that was intentional.
I mean, it almost
yes, it was an artist. It was an artist approach. Yes, for him.
I would feel like, yeah.
Well, one thing is, it rolls. That scene that you're saying, I'm not going to say what happens, but the thing rolls, just like the loop does.
Interesting.
Metaphorical.
I was going to show something. I've been saving this for the next video I've been doing, but I better just show off these walking palm trees. Have you guys heard of walking palms? So down in Ecuador, there are these trees that grow roots and walk 20 meters a year about. And so they find new places to go.
Dude, there's this documentary called The Private Life of Plants.
Mm-hmm.
Freaking dendroids are coming back.
Yeah, you know. The thing is, everybody knows this was common at some point during the Mesozoic dynasty or whatever that means now. But like, we know that these plants exist now, and this is like not just the only one, but think about sea life. But then there's also what was the other thing I was looking at? Oh yeah, the Venus flytrap is one.
It's like it's an anomaly that doesn't seem to exist.
You know, that's the thing. It's not an anomaly. The Venus flytrap, I've seen there's like 115 South American carnivorous.
How we categorize
carnivorous plants
biology in the 4 kingdoms, which I think it used to be 5 kingdoms.
Check it out. Carnivorous plants of South America, 115 pages.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's unknown.
And this is just South America. Look into the Malaysian one. What was that one called? The Rafflesia?
That's like 6 different genuses. So
Rafflesia is in Malaysia, and it's bigger than people are. Like, check out. This thing will eat a child.
It smells. It's got like the worst stench you could imagine.
This isn't even the biggest one I've seen. Where's the one?
It's a nasty-looking flower too.
I think it's a 8-foot across one.
Some of these get so crazy.
Yeah, so that's what you mean. Like, it's not a rarity. It's just a human understanding of nature.
Yeah, especially in the cities.
It's only ones that they've ever heard of, which is
Yeah. Then
I wouldn't even go near that nasty thing.
yeah, but you're from Denmark where it's safe. There's no giant man-eating flowers.
That's Malaysia. It's the same one from South America, and it's also in Malaysia.
No. They're just related in the sense that they're carnivorous and they're not actually the same because there's 115 different ones in South America, but this one is the one that I was just thinking. My girlfriend was telling me about at one point was the Rafflesia, and I had heard about it like at some point but never seen it, and I was like, oh my god, it's giant, So like I should have paid attention. But all of these carnivorous plants are fucking everywhere. Excuse me, everywhere.
They must have had some fucking giant flies back in the day.
Well, no, these things eat. Yes, they did have giant insects, but these things ate, small primates too. I mean, there's plenty of stories of being eaten by these plants. And if you think, like Little Shop of Horrors, right? Like this is the idea. It's just the idea there's a bigger one, that we're used to today. But at one point, there was a lot more oxygen. And
oh yeah, and all that BS they're doing now with CO2, this and that, man. They're just destroying the world with taking out CO2.
Well, the interesting thing about CO2 is plants eat it. So if you have a lot of CO2,
they're killing nature.
The more CO2 you have, bigger plants. So maybe that's what they want is they want to have either a plantless world or a bigger plant world. Depending
they want to just wipe out nature and put in GMOs as the alternative.
Yeah, pretty much.
Also, they want to wipe out most of humanity and have the natural world go to its pristine original state and have like everything. Like you see,
I hope that's
Hunger Games, and they have the super high speed rail between the last remaining cities. Like that's their model.
I hope that's not something that goes down. I mean, you hear the Georgia Guidestones myth a lot, and it seems if you guys haven't heard of what he's talking about, the Georgia Guidestone myths, it's very. I mean, not a myth; it's a real thing, but it's like who does it? I mean, it's almost obviously somebody with a lot of money and power, and they're interested in world culture, but only so much as to destroy most of it. Ironically.
Myth is not myth. Also means it's hidden or forgotten true info.
Right.
Pretty short.
These words are weird to people.
Yeah, pretty much forgotten information.
Yeah, see that people defaced it.
Yeah, but people come back and clean it.
I'm like, okay, if you wanted to face it, that's fine. But I think it should remain in its form just for.
Is that the one that had blood on top?
Languages. That's either Arabic or Farsi, and it's like it's in 8 different languages, 2 on each side.
Dedicated by the wonderful people of whomever. They don't
read the
RC Christian, Bobby Light knows. Yeah, good job, Bob. Exactly.
Oh, you know what else? Someone named Bobby. Is that Bobby?
Yeah, Armor, also the Transcendence. Absolutely.
Amanda, we could, if you want to, at the end of this thing, we could have an open session where we can let people join and talk themselves.
Yeah, people should be. Anybody who wants to do anything, let me know. I'd be down to talk to people and have more people talk. I mean, I'm just trying to do limited interviews at a time. Some people really get weird about there being a lot of people doing a lot of things at once. So I've been trying to do these mostly as study sessions when they're that big.
But I think we should focus on on a couple of things right now, and then only focus on those unless somebody writes something in the chat in the live
I'm just
chat.
looking through the questions real quick. So I was asking if anybody had any questions.
What would they like us to talk about?
Yeah.
Because we can literally talk about pretty much anything. There's not many subjects I don't know a bit about, to say at least.
Government papers and most of us. Archives. What's one that we could? What about just recently there was a thing that happened. Someone was bringing up Lee Harvey Oswald.
Oh yeah, I met his girlfriend back when he died. The woman he was with back when he died, Judith.
Really?
Yeah, I have her on Facebook too. Yeah, I talked to her.
That's a trip,
I even have I got a thing from her. I still have it here.
Something people don't know much about is that Lee Harvey Oswald.
He didn't do it.
Regardless of anything,
he actually saved Kennedy's life the first time by leaking that something would happen that he shouldn't go, and then the second time they faked it and blamed him because he screwed them over as they thought.
There's this I think it's a documentary.
He tried to save him the second
know
time.
who really shot Kennedy. It's this guy named James Fields. No, sorry, James Files, Files, just like a file holder. James Files is the person who really shot Kennedy. From what I can tell, anyway. I won't go into it. Y'all have to watch it.
I wanted to bring up really quickly that he was a member of the Discordian Church of Eris,
He
and
made
that
a phone call.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, well, sorry. You remember Jack Ruby, who shot Lee Harvey Oswald and killed him?
Mm-hmm.
And he said he was angry, He ran a bar, and it's really complicated. That's why you got to look up the whole James Files, Jack Ruby thing. Jack Ruby, when they put him in jail, he made one phone call for like 10 minutes to someone, and someone years later traced the number and found out he was calling the CIA office. So this guy's Jack Ruby. If he's just like a freaking local bar owner, which he's not, he had connections to the mob, then why would he call a friend who was like a CIA senior official? That's because the person he called was Jack Ruby's handler. And this is tied into everything with, even George Bush Sr.
Also, I showed a video earlier that people didn't really understand why I was showing about the some people I think got the point of the park accelerator videos after we were talking about the amusement parks and the reason why we're looking into linear accelerators and electricity and the idea of rebuilding this technology that's been around in a long time. But something that's kind of interesting is that Lee Harvey Oswald was at the Atomic Energy Commission in Tennessee at the.
Doesn't sound too Russian to me. We're in a Cold War, and that's the people who control the nuclear technology.
But it gets really interesting when you start knowing about Tartary, because I know, seriously, it's like, there you go. Yeah. Here's your connections to the study of the height of technology, which, by the way, particle physics in like the 30s already.
That's another thing. Any sufficiently good alchemist in like the 1600s or even earlier could have made a nuclear reaction. All they have to do is isolate enough, uranium, and there's ways you can do it. So,
right. I mean, that's something we could even talk a bit about. How many people have been arrested in the 50s for making their own nukes in their garages? Like, you've seen that Dragnet episode, right? Like the boy with the atomic bomb, and he used a tuna can to do it.
He took americium. It's a visible isotope out of smoke detectors, I think. Or maybe I'm thinking of a different guy, but there's a bunch of them.
So someone says, "Sweet, didn't know it existed."
Yeah, you can make a breeder reactor with essentially like 5,000 smoke detectors, and you can actually create. If not plutonium, it might be. It's one of the upper actinide series elements.
Philip K. Dick.
Like a nuclear bomb.
Maybe we should do something about that. Before I do Philip K. Dick, I want to bring up a book that I always think of when anyone tells me.
Philip K. Dick. Oh, the NSA's, they love Dick.
Yeah, they do. But that's important. But someone wanted to talk about, I think this is probably a very important book to look into.
Explain the whole metaphysical concept of Valis, because it's incredible.
And it's a game.
And it applies to the modern era with the U.S., American Empire.
But you guys know about The Man in High Castle, which interestingly also became a series at the beginning of the Mandela Effect period when people started mentioning that kind of thing. And, when people started really making a big deal about it.
Is it fair use to play like a trailer?
I don't know. I think I might be allowed to get away with trailers, but
I would think so, because it's a public thing. A trailer is for everybody.
Well, you'd be surprised. I can show photos pretty easily, but you guys know the story basically is that it's a world where the Japanese and the Germans took over the United States and split it in half. And so on one side is Japanese California, and the other side is East Coast New Reich or whatever.
I've already said Philip K. Dick is fair use, and I think that's correct too.
Wait, who said that?
Wait, no, you said that. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I can't get away with certain amounts of video. I'm looking into what I can get away with, but in general, it's just safer not to mess with it. However, there's all these great pictures like that. You don't really need to see the movie unless you want to pay them. In which case, you might as well pay Amazon because it's free included with their thing.
Is this Amazon?
It's free included with Amazon's Prime channel.
Oh yeah, so it's one of Amazon and Netflix are like boxing.
It is a very good show.
It's really
Although
legit.
it is a disgustingly horrid drama. I don't
But
even like the story.
You can
I love
totally
the
read the
backdrop, though.
you can read the books, and that would probably be even better, honestly. But the point is that they're trying to find evidence of the way the other dimension was. So they're looking for the films, and the films themselves reveal the actual way things were in the same time, but in a different dimension, where the Americans won the war, and that's the dimension that we're from. So it's kind of an interesting show for that, at least. But Etienne, how's it been, bro? This is my Quebecy friend Etienne. He's a chatter. He just decided to say hello. I'm glad he's in this. We need to get him in here at some point because he knows a lot of stuff. His grandfather is a kind of famous Montreal poet and writer, and so he also knows a lot about like 19th century, early 20th century literature, especially from Canada and in French. So pretty useful guy. But let's see here. KS, what about the mud flood? What about evidence of the mud flood in Denmark? Or
yeah, in the big cities, there is a lot of buildings with basements that has, stairways down to the fucking door down there. They are very weird, those stairways. It's like they wasn't supposed to be there with the narrow space they got. They go so straight down and small steps on some basements. And it's like just like that. Buildings that seems like the basements is too far on the ground. There's a lot of that. Yeah. I don't think that you would build it like that. It just seems wrong with just a little bit of the window popping up in a hole that's been made in the future. It seems like they made this hole so the window can actually see up to the fucking street just a little.
Victor is also in Aarhus right now. So anything you wanted to mention, Victor? This is about Aarhus, but in general, Denmark. We're just mentioning mud flood evidence. So glad to have you with us. I mean, one of the things I thought was weird in Aarhus was the food court area, the food market in Aarhus, because there's it goes down a hill really hard, and then.
Oh, you're talking to somebody in the chat?
Yeah. There's this guy from Denmark who is in the chat right now, but he was in the Google Hangout last video, and he's in Aarhus, and he's the philosophy and law. But one of the other cool things about Aarhus is they've got pulled pork and duck fat fries. And so if you go down to the food street market, which is this fake little building, which is obviously a very modern building, you'll see outside of it all the old area, and you've got these really gnarly basement areas, and then these triple-story buildings with glass elevators across them. But the weird thing I noticed when I went to visit the elevator is that they have keyed basements that you can't get into the basement in the elevator without a key. So that's kind of weird, but something I'd like to know more about. Just didn't know much about the basements when I went to Denmark, so.
Yeah. That's fascinating. I'm wondering if you search on, you're in DuckDuckGo, but if you search the main ones, Google Bing Yahoo, for mud flood in mud flood Denmark, what do you think is going to be the first results?
If you just go on Google, what's it called? Google Earth, and go down to Street View in Copenhagen. I should have
just read that right there. Let's see, mud.
And then you could also
mud flood.
Try from a VPN or
debunked. There's theory was the first thing, but as soon as
I Snopes and the stupid sites, no nothing sites. But
I'm never even bothered, to be honest, to see what these people have to say.
Verify, how the algorithms are working. They are.
I don't think anyone's really,
an IP that's not connected to any of your accounts because they know who you are just from everything, every way that they can gather data.
Very interesting.
I'm a technical guy. I'll do that one day. We need to make a forum.
I have a Discord, right? Is that what it's called? Diaspora? What's a Discord?
Huh? Yeah.
What is it
called? I'm not a fan of Discord though.
Yeah? Okay. Well, I'll put a link in there anyway. Armory, you know about this. Yeah. Yay! Good job, Armory. He's the mod, and he's a hero.
Amanda
Actually,
P.
I didn't mean to assume your gender. Is we there?
She can see. I can send emails to the sucking account. Yeah, send me. Okay.
Also, Ben. Yeah, put your in. You know, also if you're trying to send anything, you can use the Patreon. You don't have to sign up for anything. You can just do it for free. Just send a message through that. Or if you have an email, then send it to my email. Or if you want to use the Facebook, or if you have a carrier pigeon, whatever you want. We got stuff.
Carrier pigeon is preferred on his side.
I would go with owl personally, and I hate to be so cliche, but.
I got an idea. In future talks, this would only literally take like 20 minutes to create or set up. We could have a public, like a Dropbox, but it's this thing. It's different. It's called OwnCloud. We could have a public drive while the Hangout's going on, and people could upload anything that they find interesting.
Yeah.
Photos, documents, PDFs.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I've been wanting to do is do some more Spectrum stuff. How many? I assume anybody who's watching this wasn't super annoyed by the video I posted about the linear accelerator. But how do you guys feel? Is there a way you think I could post these things that you guys can still watch them with their? I like posting public stuff and it's old, but I don't want to like upset anybody. Is there like a good balance here, or like what could I do to like make that more comfortable for people? Also curious. Oh, and I need to bring up Rasputin Naked. Thank you. Rasputina is a very important band. I'm going to do a little bit more about them at some point because we'll be talking about some of the earlier iconography of the Tartary that I heard growing up. It's pretty much in the early 90s. The late 90s that a lot of this stuff, the steampunk movement, it really kind of opened up this idea. And kind of like the that movie we were talking about, Southland Tales, which it's very weird because it's like a time travel movie where pimps don't commit suicide, but it really gets into it's during the Bush presidency, so people were it's very very dynamic, and we've forgotten what it was like not to have the media just really love the president, right, and everything that they fart. So it's interesting that we're now at a point again, which is kind of similar, and it has a lot of the same tendencies to affect our culture. So she made this whole band about this kind of Victorian Tater style, she called it at some point.
It's the Tsar epoch also, because they were in power from, God, really ever since the war with Kazakhstan or Khazaria up until World War One. That's how long they reigned, and like the Illuminati swore that at some point.
Yeah, Doctor Who and steampunk.
And execute the Tsar.
But this one album I was going to try to talk about is the O Perilous World, I think, and it kind of has a lot to do with when she looked into the media and the news, she realized that she couldn't make up something more bizarre than the things that. Over the last few years, I realized the current world events were more bizarre than anything I could scrounge up from the distant past. So I obsessively read daily news on the internet and copied words, phrases, whole stories, and looked at things through a new way. And so this is actually kind of the start, I think, in a lot of ways, of that movement, at least in America, in pop culture, is looking towards the Tartary. And some of the songs on here, like 1816, The Year Without a Summer, right? Draconian Crackdown. And there's a couple others I want to Cage in a Cave. Like, but where's the live album? O Perilous World, is that what it was? Or what's the one I really like called? I forget. All of a sudden. Oh yeah, Holocaust of Giants. She has a song called Holocaust of Giants, and I really recommend you check this out. It's straight up like that's you, Tina. But it's all about digging up the bodies of fossils And I thought it was about mammoths or dinosaurs when I first heard it, because I was young. But now I'm listening to it more and I'm getting it. Put it that way. So, Rasputina. And then we were talking about Discord. I wanted to bring up Discord again.
Any comments, Chaos, on that band or like the titles? Because you've got a lot more insight into that.
Right. What do you think about the pop?
What?
Rasputina?
Yeah, just show them the title.
I don't know that.
Oh, you haven't heard of them? Yeah, they were like in
No.
Buffy
Or you
at
could,
one point.
lyrics. You could look up the lyrics for maybe some of the most provocative titles.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe Holocaust of Giants lyrics, and then 1816 year without a summer lyrics. In the spring of 1315, there began an era of unpredictable weather. It did not lift until 1851. You remember 1816 as the year without a summer. So, I mean, it's right there. And then it gets into it like, during the most 7 years of this little ice age, we looked for scapegoats to blame. Many people tried to blame it all on a vast Freemason conspiracy or Benjamin Franklin and his experiments with electricity. I feel like there's more to this song. Like, I've heard a second version which includes the slowing of the planet, actually. The eruption of the volcano Tambora blanketed the earth with ash. This was the real cause discovered by some explorers years later, looking back on the past. So that's one of them. The other gnarly one, when I was 9 years old, way back in Ohio, the hired man was digging up a well on my father's land. And he found a massive bone. And since then, I've known that a race of giants lived in the northern hemisphere. 10,000 years ago, they lived right here. It seemed incredible. But yet, it's the truth that a fossilized and petrified, calcified primeval brute was turned to stone, but he was not alone. I need some water.
Oh man,
Yeah.
we have to get some actual ethnic Russians and Russian citizens on the show.
Well, that's one. I'm not going to ruin Rasputina for you. I'm going to make you listen to that song. But
Yeah.
I did want to get into Discord a bit. I think I might just pop up into my screen I was working on about this. Let's see if I can Navigator. There we go. Do I have... Oh, it's freezing, of course.
You know what, KS, if you feel up to it, you could explain your whole your avatar, the picture, and how that relates to like the cosmic egg model.
Yeah.
You are
You don't,
You should do that for me. You are better with the names and the expressions.
God, Cass, for such a genius, you're so shy. I mean, you've got so much to say,
Well, you can explain the geometry of what that is.
We are jumping too much around and stuff I don't really talk about or don't really care much about, in these talks. Right. So I'm just listening more than speaking.
What about like for a bit? Let's talk about time, though. I mean, what is your symbol mean? What is it about?
I'll let Ben explain, because some of the names, some of the things he meant, I don't even remember the names for some of the things because I didn't know before.
You could start with,
sorry?
Continue.
I made that my picture here on the picture you are watching now when I speak. That picture I made without knowing what I was doing. I just stopped what I was doing in the middle of the night and started making that. And I don't remember why. I didn't even know why when I was doing it. I just did. And it ended up being that. Yeah. And then I was like, why am I doing this? I should stop doing this. It's kind of boring. But no, I'm going to go on. I'm going to see what it ends up as.
Yeah.
And it just ended up at that, I I didn't
Yeah.
have that planned. I was just bored, and even more bored doing it. I just did it.
Can you can you send me that picture on Skype again? Because you're on Hangouts. It
Yeah, I
cuts
know
it
they
out
can't
into a
see it.
circle.
I know.
Yeah, they can't see the complete picture.
I don't
I
think
could
they
search.
can.
I mean,
See
right now it's
We just got
all you should
close.
be able to see is the circular.
Yeah, but
thing.
it's a square picture. You got to see the whole thing. And
It
John's the
actually
one who
does
connected the
have the whole
dots.
thing in it.
So
Even
what
not
are
on
these? The
screen, though.
96AE? What am I looking at?
Okay, I'm gonna go up. This is a real life proof.
I remember the thing that made me start on it was that the Danish letter A. It's like in the small version, it's a A and an E together, sitting together as one. And I was like, oh, that looks like the number, 69. It looks like 6 and 9. So I just put them together in Paint, 69 and the AE. I put them together next to each other to compare how they looked, and yeah, they're pretty much the same thing. And then I just started copying and stuff, and it ended up being this picture I'm gonna send him now.
I found it. Not only that, I've got the whole thread. Remember, he had one with Liam Douglas. I believe it's magic. I got the
Yeah,
exact spot where we talk about it and break it all down.
but screw that, just the picture.
Yeah, but
But yeah, how long would you consider yourself to have been woke for?
My whole life, but
Yeah.
knowing about information and stuff, that didn't come before after my life in Thailand. It started in my life in Thailand, but just slowly because I was too busy with stuff. But it really started when I was after being in jail in Thailand and being deported home. Then it happened.
Well, there you
yeah,
go.
there's a big story behind all of this.
Yeah, then it all just happened.
Yeah. Can I share my screen real quick? I won't have
share your
anything.
screen?
Yeah,
Yeah, of course.
just don't
Yeah,
share
it's on.
anything.
Yeah, there's no
All right,
copyright.
well, I'll keep it within a range.
Just
here.
no videos is all.
So this is a chat that took place August last year, August 11. So, all right, so John knows what this is. This is the full picture that KS has for his avatar. See, the 6 and the 9 and the A and the E is the same thing represent. There's an arrow that's got color, it's yellow, and then there's a bottom arrow. So we were making some connections. See, when you told me about this, John had been telling me about this book for like 2-3 days before that. I'm trying to find where it starts. Yeah, so there's this xenoclassy that's related to language, but
and you're into the Prince of Discordia. Perfect.
Yeah,
Which ties us back to Lee Harvey Oswald.
There's this figure here. It's like a net. It's a tangled. It's a like pretty much entanglement. So it's a net of these. It's a pentagram. Sorry, it's a pentagon that curves in on itself, almost fractally, like the golden ratio. And actually, the pentagon does have the golden ratio in it. There's something called to look it up, but it's called Plato's magic triangle or something. But a pentagon is made of 5 triangles that are each rotated. So the cover on this book, the Principia Discordia, it has this little symbol in the center where there's an axis up and down, and then there's these 2 crescent moons. I didn't know anything about this at all. I've never heard of this in my life. John brings it up. 3 days later, KS shows me his drawing, and this is a higher dimensional shape that's rotating. I don't know. I think it's an icosahedron. It's a 5D icosahedron. So you have that. You have these, and then thing in the center, and then KS it's called, automatic writing is what you did. And you weren't aware of it at the time, I don't think, because I've done it before. I wasn't aware until after. It's like this compulsion to draw out some kind of visual or, yeah.
Right, to find the meta formulas.
To put it into the physical world in terms of language or,
Something I was gonna
Yeah.
say
done.
because I keep wanting and it's funny you brought up Discord. Otherwise, I'd forgotten to say it was Carrie Vendel Thornley, otherwise known as Lord Omar, and he was into Zenarchy. He was raised Mormon, and his ideology focused into chaos instead of order and discord. The goddess Eris,
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Eris goddess.
Eris?
And so you gotta tie this stuff in with the Beach Boys and Charles Manson and with
Oh, Jesus, yeah.
well, yeah, I mean with all of the stuff that was going on in the 60s, right? Like, come on, like it's funny to think about that, I guess, but the Beach Boys, right, and Charles Manson made music together, you know, at some point. And so you got to really put the 60s into perspective. It wasn't the way you were told. I mean, maybe you were, but maybe you got to look into Ken Kesey and, you know, when the 60s became whatever the hell you think the 60s are. Because it wasn't for a while.
And why?
Pretty much all women back in that time were, you know, in music and movies were played by men.
Yeah, well,
Born
I mean,
and bred
that's
for the
another
war.
that's another theory a lot of people have.
It's
I
not a theory.
personally, I pull out of the hermaphrodite conspiracy still.
Back
because
then,
my
it
thing is more
was
about
totally that.
hormones. I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of people that are even. I mean, come on, people. That's what the society we live in is a society about living with the passing of whatever gender you want to be. We've
But
become that
the
way.
further
So
back you
clearly,
go, the more obvious they were.
Yeah.
Nowadays, it's a mix.
But yeah,
Yeah.
you start seeing a lot of. I mean, I grew up in Santa Cruz. I see a lot of people that are openly transgendered and like
My
you know, especially
closest
female to
friend-
male teachers and things. So you know, you can see how that works. That the genetics like that can be CRISPR DNA. However, it's not to say that there aren't people that are living as the other gender. I mean, or whatever.
My closest friend is transgender, or was this 10 years ago. We've talked since then, and even though he has not done the surgery yet, or she hasn't, you can't tell. You can't tell. Like,
Genetically, it's
that's how much
always
hormones
what you are
change.
born anyway.
Well, I
It
mean,
wasn't just,
that's
like-
what we were talking about, like XY and XX instead of like hormones and things like that.
Oh,
Because there's a big thing about how computers work, and that's more to do with their connectivity over a quantum network. But I'm trying to avoid stuff like that yet because
Well, it's not
that
like
sounds way too much like
discrimination or anything.
you sound
you
way
know?
too much like Jordan Peterson, and it's gonna upset people, you know.
Well,
They're not ready.
if Jordan Peterson
dude.
upsets people, then people got a problem with themselves.
I
Sorry,
got
but
it.
that's
I mean,
just
people got a problem with lobsters, man.
I know.
they got a problem with a lot of
A
things
lot
if
of
they don't like
lobsters, a
Jordan
lot of
Peterson.
lobsters out there in the world.
It'd be incredible.
Jordan Peterson can't be more spot on, you know.
Well, I mean, I was going to bring up in terms of things that are kind of interesting also after Discord is the Church of the Subgenius, and that's something that focused on J.R. Bob Dobbs. And I like this one. I'd say this is the most innocuous seeming conspiracy religion because it's this idea of Discord essentially, but not quite. It's that the Jehovah One is a radio station that transmitted in this sort of a 50s apocalypse time and that happened. It's kind of similar to Scientology, but way more nuts. Very, very Charles Manson. And it refers to like, you know, the radio deities and spirits. But the conspiracy in Slack are, you know, the thing about Slack, you know, we were talking the video I played earlier. One of the reasons I put it up about the Slack video about the atomic physics is because of the Church of the Subgenius and, you know, J.R. Bob Dobbs, because the idea of the bar theme from Slack is the quality promoted in the church. And really, you know, when you get into the idea of what a church is and this interconnectivity concept, that's when you understand the flow of the Tao as Slack, and particle accelerators have a lot to do with that. And it's kind of the way they use video games to test new video cards. They're using you to test particle acceleration. I mean, your life. And that's kind of weird.
Yeah.
But
by the way, just a short comment on the, you know, all the stuff with the trans and all that. It's not that people hate, you know, some do, but it's when I talk about it, it's not that I have anything against people who actually feels like that and is, you know, and who does the transition. I don't have a personal problem with them. I'm just not for it, you know. But I don't have a personal problem with it.
It's all it's all about whatever people want. I mean,
It's
I don't really want to
it's
go there.
who they are, it's how they feel. That's
I'm
fine.
gonna avoid that like at all costs with this conversation.
The only
But
ones I have a thing against.
We should probably have a thing more about the doping scandals of East Germany in the 80s, where people didn't know that they were being transitioned. We can talk a lot about interesting stuff, but I don't really want to go there right now.
No, we don't have to. The thing is just it's just focusing. I'm just focusing on the ones that deceives and lies, and tries to make.
And that's less to do with anything other than just politics and like people's philosophy.
Yeah, and that's not just random people in the street.
Yeah.
That's people in the know and stuff.
Let's segue back to Discordianism on another level, which is just the occult and like how it connects to atomic physics, because a lot of people are studying this idea of negative space, and they want to experience negative space as emptiness or junk, but it's not. It's really just, it's everything that really makes you up. And so a lot of these people, like Thornley, they are, even Oswald, that were getting into Discord, we're really interested in the gap between the space, and it actually connects to the astrology of the ancients, who looked, especially in the South America and East Asia and Africa, looked for the space between the stars more for anything than the stars themselves. And that's interesting because we know now today what that represents, the constellations and the volume of space between there.
Yeah,
but
that's also ether theory. John could talk at length about that and reverse time.
I also very much love and hate my autistic mind at this moment, because I wish to God that those people were on Discord. I would talk to them regularly.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of stuff we can get into just about that and about subatomic particles and their metaformulas. I mean, that's something.
John, even though you do gaming, right? Would you agree with the postulation that a lot of what goes on in mainstream, like AAA titles right now, is essentially mass cultural shift, or I want to say mind control, but it's not quite as simple as mind. It's more like shifting the culture in a certain direction, which is towards transhumanism and just accepting technology.
I mean, right now, the biggest marketing analytical stream that's being. I say the biggest marketing analytical stream that's being utilized at the moment is Call of Duty, and right now it pulls 14 million DAO every day.
I've never heard of it.
That's 14 million conversions every day.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. I know.
You understand what that means in the analytical sense?
Conversions at
it's 14 million conversions, but that's not even the biggest. That's like the. They do it in probably the worst way. So they're like the worst player on the walk. WoW is actually the biggest, popping in at over 550 million conversions per day.
Is it an MMORPG? That game?
Yes, but they don't seem to be giving up anytime soon.
Yeah. Well, you know what my whole side business is, but I'm gonna have to investigate that.
I mean, 550 million conversions a day. I don't even know how I can compete with that.
Yeah, well, RuneScape has, I think, 200 million active accounts. But
when Mortal Online, not Mortal Online. When Ultima Online hit its unique peak before it sold out to Electronic Arts. It was only converting maybe 16,000 people per day.
I don't really know much about video games.
Like 16,000.
I'm not sure I understand the
16,000 in 1995.
I don't see the connection between video. So what is it about this that makes it?
I was saying, like, the two biggest brands in the gaming 3.0, Web 2.0 or gaming 2.0 spaces, like Discord for communication, and then Twitch for streaming. So it's like real simple words, like Twitch, impulsivity.
The 7 deadly sins. Most of the apps.
Like a word association thing.
Most of the most popular apps are just representations of the 7 deadly sins.
Yeah, right. It's across the board. It's
adultery.
I'm not criticizing. I use the game a lot. It's everything. It's like movies, TV, games, music. It's totally 7 deadly sins. But
But yeah, I mean, I think the thing that's interesting to me about it more is like how they're getting something out of it, because they're able to make people feel like they're benefited by this, and then they're like, oh, it's
but
free.
really, but really, it is
Look forward to.
everyone with a device in their hands
Oh yeah, it's gonna be all on your phones. You're gonna
makes way more money than the money that it costs you to put into the device to use it.
Right.
Yeah.
It's insane.
If you look up
It's insane.
Red that makes cameras, they have a 3D holographic camera now.
Mm-hmm.
So that's coming to gaming soon. You're gonna have games on your phone. Like, of course, you can have the headset and all, but if you don't want to have a headset, I mean, sorry, you know those VR headset things? Yeah, they have 3D phone screens now. The technology. I don't know who owns the patent or anything, but Red might even own it. Look up Red phone. Oh, it's not that important, but the other thing, yeah, if you look up, Red camera phone or
the Red camera is making their own
cinema. It's spelled cinema. Yeah, they
Red's
have a
making
phone.
their own.
It's $1,300. It's got a holographic screen.
Oh man, I kind of shouldn't be looking at stuff I want to buy. It's not good for me. But
yeah, but if you look up real quick, the 1980s Electronic Arts logo, it's total occult symbolism, and they were like this is before they even knew how to control the market, The
1999 EA logo?
I don't know when they started. Electronic Arts, not EA Sport. Electronic Arts, the entire brand. Okay, you see the one cube, sphere, triangle? That one, and it's got stripes.
Whoa, I like it.
It's like Entergy. Where I'm in the country, we're served by like a monopoly power company, so Entergy, same logo, only our sun. So you ever saw that? It's like Illuminati training video introduction thing. It's like a spoof, but it's like really serious. Like they do a good job. You ever seen that?
No, I don't remember which one. What's it called?
It's like Welcome to the Illuminati. You've made it.
Huh.
That's not fun. But it's a convincing spoof or parody, and it's made by someone in the know who really is a researcher. So, it's got this guy's like 65 or 60, gray hair. It's like walking through it, and the background's all red, and then that's their logo. It's like the EA pyramid there.
So what was it called before photographs? It was monochrome process. Is that right?
Yeah.
So and then before monochrome is fleeting silhouettes. So what's interesting is you start looking at these monochrome pictures, and I kind of think maybe what do you think about pictures before pictures? Do you think that there are photos before photos history, or what?
Honestly, I don't know, but I think what happened was cultures realized that the only thing you can actually preserve when there's a fall situation is actual stone carvings. Like that's the only thing that would last, because they don't know how long their time on Earth is gonna last. They don't know when they're gonna collapse if the calamity happens. So they at some point transitioned to stone for language and pictograms.
I think that there's a lot of pictures that probably are made to look like paintings, but I know that Norman Rockwell could paint. However, most of his stuff was done from photos, so it's kind of like even Vermeer, we've pretty well proven used lenses. So I mean, if you've seen that documentary on the Vermeer thing, right?
Well, Isaac Newton in the 1600s had a completely correct understanding of light. It's in
corpuscles.
Mathematical, yeah.
Yeah, I've been wanting to do something about corpuscles. I think we need to really
theory. That's the particle side of.
Let's talk about corpuscles, Newton. What do you want to say about the actual?
Oh, I don't know. Like I took physics in college for 2 semesters, but like.
So the idea is that like when white light goes through a prism,
yeah, that's how he discovered stuff.
It breaks out into corpuscles.
He's the first experimenter for that.
And as we now know, what we have are spectrums of waves in the PAR spectrum, photoactive radiation spectrum. But isn't that just literally corpuscles, actually?
Yeah. Can you go back to that screen?
Yeah, this one.
Yeah. Okay. Newton believed that bodies emitted energy in particles or corpuscles that traveled in straight lines. True, it's a ray. 1666 performed an experiment with a prism that showed that the sun's light is white, consisting of all of the colors of the spectrum. Wow. So yeah, I don't know. I just like that date.
Yeah.
Half, 2/3 of London burned down in 1666, and it
For one
was
reason or another.
past timeline is on September 10th at night in the bakers, but they've changed that. I swear to God, I've got it saved.
Yeah, I feel like we need to go a little deeper into particles and waves
Yeah,
in order to show why corpuscles are actually real in the wave particle duality.
Yeah,
People
look up
don't.
something called reverse time quantum eraser. Later, I mean, you could do it later, but we're now.
Lloyd choice quantum
Yeah,
eraser.
okay. Delayed choice quantum eraser. It's essentially going backwards in time. It's a time machine. You can actually build one. You just can't travel in it.
Yeah, and so then you can it's reset buttons.
You're referring to the time knife, right?
That's another name for this experiment I've heard of.
Something
This was the first one. There's been many follow-up experiments. So from what I can tell, a lot of people are in denial in the physics community about this. They don't want to accept that you can change the past and causality is a flexible thing. But if you talk to some really, bright, informed people who are actual scientists, physicists, they'll say, yeah, this is real. Schrodinger's cat,
I've seen the time knife.
Oh.
It's scary.
I just saw somebody writing, I don't believe light is a particle.
Well, I am with you on that, but you gotta say, well, what is locality to begin with? Like, what is measurement of three-dimensional coordinate systems like? What if there is nothing you can actually measure? You can only perceive a boundary around it.
The wave particle duality, they are inextricably linked.
Well, in experiments, they have the characteristic of being a particle under certain conditions. But
so what about people saying it's protons?
Huh? Protons? Protons have mass. We're talking about photons. Which raises the question, there's that story about, I think, 15 grams or something. When you die,
21 or 23 or 28. 21 grams.
You want to explain that?
Well, it's just when you die, apparently you lose almost an ounce. About an ounce. Not quite. I think it's 21 grams or something like that, but it's very close to an ounce, and so people will say that's the weight of your soul or the connection to the soul, because maybe the soul's weightless, but there's a tie on it or something.
Yeah, there has to be a tie. There's a paradox in physics no one has ever talked about. I don't know why this is like skeleton in the closet stuff. You remember in relativity theory, like, okay, the sun, light from distant stars travels around the sun, and as it passes the sun, they say it bends, and they can measure the bend of light.
Mm-hmm.
If it's bending light, that means that it's pulling on the light's pulling on. See, that's the problem. It's imparting momentum to light to make it bend, to change its trajectory, because light has momentum. Momentum equals h over v, I think. That means that the light has to be pulling on the sun also. That means the light has some type of analog for mass. Every action has to have an equal and opposite reaction. If the sun bends the light passing by any object is going to bend that object towards it. Yeah, they show light passes a black hole and bends, but the thing is, when the light bends, light has momentum, so that has to impart a reverse momentum to the substance in this black hole, which pulls the light out. So either way, whether it exists or not, in their equations that they have, says that light has something like mass, like 21 grams.
Yeah, and there's, it's kind of like, it reminds me of the thing people said, air didn't have a weight for a long time. Well, put a basketball on a scale, and then
they thought that heat was this thing, it was a fluid. They thought that temperature was caused by a quantity, that heat was a weightless substance that interpenetrates into everything. It's called the Kelvin theory of heat. Lord
Which is
Kelvin,
actually one of
he
the
was off.
main reasons we still believe in gravity the way we do. It's like a misnomer that has a
We?
lot to do. Well, but yeah.
We don't.
What do you mean we, Kimasabi? All right. Well,
I'm just saying there's flaws in their own logic system that if
Yeah.
mass can pull on light, light has to pull on mass. It's the only way it works.
It's a fallacy that's antiquated, but so much that it's hilarious that people still argue over just misunderstandings of what it even means.
Yeah,
Because
and even their
conservation of
math
momentum-
doesn't add up.
Right.
You just got conservation of momentum.
I mean,
That's-
I think the idea that no one believes in gravity is not true. It's just the idea that gravity is not described correctly, and it's actually part of something else. Gravity basically is a false equation that can be proven to be incorrect, and I would stand by that. But there are other things that can explain gravity, and gravity is a part of. And I think that has a lot more to do with
Electromagnetic
you know,
pull.
Walter
St.
right,
Thomas
exactly.
Aquinas' unmoved mover concept, which
You
is
know,
what. Sorry.
I'll let you go.
Oh, I was gonna say really quickly. I looked at this video a while ago by 3 Brown, 1 Blue.
Yeah,
I think I have.
channel. That guy's great.
I want to see if I can really quickly find it, like, or how hard that's gonna be to find. But basically, I was gonna do a little thing about how if you calculate a curve, I don't know if it must have been. It was about the we're at flat space or something like that. It was about if you take a mass and then you hit it against itself, it creates a curve. Did I find it? I lost it. I'll have to look for it. Hold on, I'll just look on mine.
Everything in physics is about curves.
3 Brown, 1 Blue video about the most unexpected answer. Okay, I feel very much like I have to just pause to show it. Basically, what he does is he takes 2 objects and he rams them into each other on a flat plane. And what it does is it produces a number of collisions, which are a factor of pi.
Oh my God, are you serious?
Of course, because this is a curve. This is a holographic curve. Because what happens is the mass, when it hits into itself, bounces into itself at a burst of 10 to the power of 38 clacks per second, based on 100 billion, or 100, to the power of 20 minus 1 kilograms against 1 kilogram. And, the real process of this physics is this algorithm that explains the amount of collisions, which eventually start to break down into a number that is visibly 4 in base 9 math, I think, according to her.
You could, everything. I mean, everything is equally interchangeable between different base systems. I mean, most people really only know, if you're into computers, binary, hexadecimal, and decimal, but there's an infinite number of bases. Man, that guy is amazing. I'm gonna have to watch that.
Armor's been talking about the electroverse, and I definitely want to bring. And I've been working on a video to explain more about how the electroverse works, and also just in general how energy.
Look up
Magnetic energy and all that,
Right.
That's what people gotta look into, electromagnetic stuff.
Yeah, I do kind of think someone saying gravity is a joke, and I kind of think actually gravity is a sort of a joke, because the fact that it's created by these esotericists who believe in God, like, obviously it seems like a joke. It's like they're trying to say it's this thing that holds you down, when they had blips before it.
Yeah, and you can take a fucking balloon with helium, and that thing weighs almost nothing, but it beats gravity.
Yeah, I mean, silk blimps too. If you think about the ancient silk blimps and the Silk Roads, I'm gonna do something about that at some point.
If a
clearly
fucking balloon with helium can do that.
You've heard of is it Ernest Mach? What's his first name? The Mach, the Mach number of aircraft. It's the speed of sound. He had a completely different theory of gravity. So it's called the Mach principle. If you want to.
Mach principle.
Yeah, but anyway.
Mach's principle in physics.
Read the Britannica, or whichever one looks good.
The imprecise name, or the name given by Einstein to an imprecise hypothesis credited by Ernst Mach. You are standing in a field looking at the stars. Your arms are resting freely at your side, and you see that the distant stars are not moving. Now start spinning. The stars are whirling around you, and your arms are pulled away from your body. Why should your arms be pulled away from your body when the stars are whirling? Why should they be dangling freely when the stars don't move? And so he says it's not a coincidence, and that the stars relate to the local inertial frame.
It's all about time. If you look up more recent understandings of it, there's this guy, I think Feynman. Maybe if you type Mach Feynman, Feynman principle or conjecture. Maybe it wasn't Feynman. I could be wrong too.
What about the North
No, you
Star?
found it. Wheeler-Feynman absorber theory.
Okay,
What
that's
about the
it.
North Star? Why can you always see the North Star if it's spinning around? You know, that's also a thing. You know,
Right.
that
Yeah.
should
Weird.
make people wonder about where they are and what it is.
Is that it?
Well, they
Yeah,
keep making
okay,
the excuse
that's
the
it.
planets that wobble,
Well, that's
tilt,
it.
and it's just worse and worse math.
Mhm.
But Wheeler-Feynman absorber theory. So let's explain
Read
this.
gravity theory. Or I'm trying to find where the good stuff starts. It says, I'll let you read it. You got a good speaking voice.
Gravity theory.
Or just,
So,
if I say it
inspired
in
by the
Mach-
Machian nature of the Wheeler-Feynman absorber theory for electrodynamics, Fred Hoyle and
causality.
proposed
This whole thing's about timelines. and
Narlikar
causality.
proposed their own theory of gravity. In the context of general relativity, this model still exists in spite of recent astronomical observations that have challenged this theory. Stephen Hawking has criticized. Okay, can we get past this criticism? Where's the
Yeah, forget the criticism. Just get to
Yeah.
the point.
description? The gravitational constant G is arbitrary and is determined
This is
by
gonna
the
be too
mean
technical.
density of the matter of the universe. The theory was inspired by Feynman as a graduate.
You know, this might be too technical. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I can. I'm not sure if I can really explain what this is, but basically the idea is it's a
All right,
relativity
the way
theory.
it works is like this. The whole
It's a-
concept of gravity waves, that when you move something in space, it creates a wave, which is basically an attraction to a place it used to be. So you're in a pool, and you walk across the pool, you make a ripple that radiates outward. The idea is that ripple gets to the outside of the pool. It gets to the other things in the universe in the future. But the problem is you feel the effect right now. So you're saying that when you spin and you're looking up at the stars, your arms are pulled outward. There's something we don't understand what causes your arms to move. We know it's called centripetal, force, acceleration in a curve. But what Feynman says, and it's based on Mach's, it's the Wheeler-Feynman absorber theory. He says that the ripple gets to the outside of the pool in the future, and then the perimeter or the stars in the sky go back through time to the past to make your arms go outward. Then exert the force. Yeah, it's deep shit.
Pretty
Tachyons.
nuts.
Essentially tachyons.
Wow.
Saying that gravity is a tachyon that's based on Mach's principle, but
So yeah, and so explaining.
you have to watch videos on this. I mean, we'll get banned if we.
Well, we have this gift that can explain what happens when the inverse. Let's see. Because a tachyon would always travel faster than light, it would not be possible to see it approaching. After tachyon has passed nearby, an observer would be able to see two things of it, appearing and departing in opposite directions. And I'm sorry if this reminds you of like the Kennedy assassination. It's basically
Reminds me
the
of the
same technique.
Will Smith movie After Earth
Yeah,
with the Mandela effect.
I can't. I don't think I'm allowed. I don't think I can make any.
We're gonna at some point
Any what?
have, like,
I'm not allowed to talk about that movie. Let's put it
we'll
that
have a
way.
bit sheet where we can
About?
interject. We can overlay
Without
stuff.
mentioning its author, let's not go into it.
Well, okay, really quickly, let me change the subject. I think we should look into this thing I had ready to show you. That was from where did I put it? Is it in Tartary Miss? I squandered this chance to show it to you.
Someone's asking about Orgonite. KS, you know.
Yes, if you're gonna mention
here
it,
it
make
is.
the right
Here it is.
reference.
Can you guys see this? The spoiler thing right here. Is that on the screen? See that? Is that working? No.
Wait, I'm doing so much other stuff right now.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm watching it.
I see an egg.
Okay, you can see the egg, and then you can see this. Can you see this?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is from that movie we were talking about, Southland Tales. So this is the last line from the movie, the last description of the last ending of the movie. So it's a spoiler, but I'm gonna tell it to you anyway because it's interesting. The Mega Zeppelin launch is at hand. The neo-Marxist cells have begun to converge on central Los Angeles. Again, this is the synopsis of the film. Violence has erupted. Boxer Santoros heads upstairs to the Baron secret chamber. Once there, he learns of the serpentine theory. As a result, of the Baron's Utopia projects, the World 3, which by the way is Utopia 3, is coming to an end as the Earth's rotation is slowing down. This has opened up a rift in the space-time continuum on the outskirts of Lake Mead. Okay, like Mediterranean. And then I wanted to just really quickly mention, obviously, Baron Serpentine theory and time travel. Obviously, you guys have probably seen the Baron Trump's Marvelous Underground Journey.
Oh, yeah.
But there's something about, I just want to don't get too deep into what's underground, but there's little people and serpents. So
it's too connected. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
all about measuring. I'm all about statistics and measuring what's the percentage chance of something actually being a coincidence versus being, say, designed.
well,
That
it becomes true as soon as you
I don't
know.
want to believe any of this. That one is scary
Yeah,
in a good way. It's a good thing, you know.
it makes you wonder a lot about Richard Kelly, obviously, because he does a
there's
lot.
a chance that that's not somehow related to time.
I mean, Richard Kelly, he does a lot of kind of
That's
Illuminati
like,
stuff, right? Like he does a lot of his movies have the monarch eye, and that was something I was kind of debating, even bringing it up, was how often he does.
Sounds like Jodorowsky.
Yeah. And so I wonder why he knows so much of the stuff he does. So it's something that makes me worried, maybe a bit. But
that. I only watched one video today, like on occult research, but that oh man, I wish I knew the guy's channel so I could give him a shout out. But the monarch butterfly is actually a cross section of the brain. You can see it in CAT scans. It's the center of the brain.
A big thing about the monarch butterfly, if you've heard the Dalai Lama's thing, is they don't touch for most of their life, and they only really touch when they mate.
Yeah,
and they're very lonely things, and they die after that.
I know,
So they're very fragile, and they can break apart, kind of like the wings break apart. That's why it's usually compared in an MK Ultra, like to multiple personality breaks, because you terrorize somebody and make a memory lock. And there's an early movie, one of the earliest movies I remember seeing about that. What was that? The 29th League or the Odessa Files or whatever. Odessa Files, is that right?
To me, that sounds like...
No, the Odessa Files, crazy movie from 1972. The 29th League, I think, is that film? The League 20. Am I right, sir?
I don't know any of those ones.
I'll have to ask my dad. It's a movie from from Britain in the 40s. I don't know. I saw black and white movies because I didn't have cable, and the obvious thing probably. Yeah, I just had videotapes. So the videotapes I had were like black and white British movies sometimes, or Canadian ones you shouldn't have, and or Japanese cartoons you shouldn't have. But one of the weirdest ones was this one that was called, I think it was the Odessa movie. I don't know. It's like 1940 or something like that. 1940s movie. Or I don't know. Basically, the plot of the movie basically is that there's a guy.
IMDb and just type in Odessa, and we'll probably find it just based on popularity.
Maybe
it's good. Amazon owns it. They're into AI. They know how to do stuff.
Or is it the 29th Step? Is that right? 29th Step film. 39 Steps. There we go. God, somehow.
Is this the real one?
This is it. I don't know how my brain did that. That was impressive. But the 39 Steps is, really with a little help from DuckDuckGo, to be honest. But this film is about a guy who has to find this carnival guy who can answer any question. And the guy, you could ask him how old you are or how fat a woman was, and he would know. But, one thing he'd always do is he'd say, the answer is blah, 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 blah. Am I right, sir? And I'm like, yes, you're right. Well, at the end of the movie, he's like, to ask me what the 39 steps are. And then he goes into a trance and he says, the first step is to remove the race. The second step is to do the government. The third step is to corrupt. And he's got everything to how to build the bomb in his brain. And he's been shot as he's telling him, he's like, am I right, sir? It's like, yes,
this
you're
is
right.
Protocols of Zion ×3.
And this is 1935. Also, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, it's the third. So we've been talking about the third utopia, which is one of the things I just kind of inferred by mentioning that movie Southland Tales, and the idea of the slowing planet, and the idea of, sort of this protocols for an evolution of the civilization that we're living in today, and a pre-existing civilization. And yeah, it really kind of like a lot of this British propaganda from the 30s, like the great what things to come, and the 39 steps really illustrate that this is not some 90s or 60s or 50s America or something like that. This is a big thing that goes back, centuries, and at least the century. And there's definitely this kind of lifetime plan that they kind of show off in the earlier days, that's illustrating when they're trying to reach this 2012 point, which is this new civilization. And it's funny because, a lot of time they talked about 2012, like when I was growing up here, so I was all Mayan calendar before I got out of, second grade. But that movie all of a sudden comes out, and everyone, it's like, and it's the apocalypse. I was like, what? Like, like I was genuinely shocked that was an approach that people were going to take. It's like, are you serious? Like, the whole point, obviously, is that it's, this revision of time. Where's like the 2012 meme about that? Yeah.
I can't paste links into the chat on YouTube. It's very frustrating.
You can't?
No.
Try it.
I tried many times.
Just put the slash with it.
I can't even get it to paste in.
Huh. Well, that's horrible. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
if you want to send it to me,
screenshot, because I have a huge compilation of censorship screenshots.
I copy
Yeah.
something, I try to paste it, and nothing happens.
Paste it to Andreas.
I'm sorry. If you want to send it to me, I can try to put it out there for you. Oh man, so much cool stuff. Let's see here. Someone's talking about the anti. I think I like the antipasta. If we're going to talk about antis, I think that's more important. I like antediluvian, antipasta. I don't really get into like the anti anything, because that's just, once you do that, you're basically talking about dualism and duality and yin yang, and isn't that kind of evil enough? Like, to avoid that, I don't know. But
You know what?
so
I'm gonna try another browser.
all right. Also, how long have we been doing this, man? I'm thinking we should get like a ring in on any questions anybody's got. Is anybody having more questions they want to know? The mark of Dan.
They asked about Argonite.
You should talk about Argonite and Denmark. I think those are two important things: the history of the tribe of Dan and then Argonite.
Oh, is it even the tribe of Dan? I don't even believe in the mainstream stuff anymore.
Well, what do you? Yeah, well, that's exciting. There's at least a Danish person watching right now. So what is the new theory? What you got?
I don't even believe in the Viking stuff. I believe that people were, of course, sailing around, trading and whatever, but everybody was at that time. So Vikings, were we even called that? I don't know. I actually don't think so. So, whatever we were called, I believe it did start with a V, but I don't know what it was. It could be like the Russians over there, and although who was pretty much living in and next to Tartarian areas. What is they call themselves? It's something with VER. What is it they are called? Well, let me see. I don't even remember right now. I'm too tired.
Yeah.
It's not Vedic, but it's something like that, isn't it?
Not the Vedic. The
Vedic. Is it that?
That's the Indian one.
It is. Yeah, but they were also Vedics. They were many of them right now calls themselves Slavic Vedics because they were where the Vedics in India.
Yeah.
I'm with Victor on this. I tend to hear the Hyksos, the Six Kings. I hear the Hexos. It's the or Aus, maybe even like out of six. That's kind of some thought I've had. Is the 6 kings, or something like the 6 of the tribes, the 6 leaders of the tribes, or the 6 kingdoms, or the 6, fleeing, the 6 exodized, the 6 groups that left, something like that. Basque people are interesting because of the Japanese grammar, I think. 2 jellyfish. But we don't know exactly. The thing is, what it really looks like is you got this like someone just said Antichrist. How about antediluvian?
That means before flood. That's what
I think that's the more important thing. If you really want to worry about something, worry about this antediluvian period, because
And
like that.
there's not gonna be any certain person being the Antichrist.
I
If
mean,
there is
I
somebody who
think it's the
calls
camera.
himself that, is fake.
Yeah, well,
There's not gonna be any physical
what's
stuff.
the
Not physical.
Muslim Antichrist?
What I've learned.
Yeah, that's the
They have a name. They have a name for it. What's
The-
it called?
yeah the
It's called Dajjal.
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 Yeah.
Yeah. So okay. So the reason I bring him up is because the Dajjal is a one-eyed, worldwide received prophet, sort of like.
Some videos on that.
I kind of think what they mean is the camera, because it's the one-eyed prophet. It's this thing that
They mean a lot of serious business with that
See,
stuff.
if you look at the
They've shown all these sites in Saudi Arabia, and they have like what was this thing? They have it like built into the land.
Not that I have any problem with Panavision. I mean, just in general, but just the idea of media might be the thing that's like disconnecting people from reality, and they're used to augmented reality.
If you just look at the Dajjal figure, the head with the one eye closed, it could also symbolize, someone having their spiritual eye closed,
which is unfortunately a lot of people.
Yeah, which is most people. So maybe that's also just a symbol for having your spiritual eye closed, not even having that side working at all.
Yeah,
only using the physical side, the logical side,
having
which
said
is
that,
useless without the other one.
It's really like, if you're going to study the Antichrist, like you got to really understand the Christ first, and then you can be like, okay, well, this is something opposed to that. But if you don't really get to the point where you know what you believe the Christ is, because a lot of people will tell you that Christ doesn't exist, and like that's coming around again. I think you should kick that guy out of your house. But if you get somebody who tells you that it was like a mystical yogi who taught Pilates, that's another route that they'll take. And I kind of think that's another. It's kind of an interesting thing. Someone tells you that there really is just a prophet, and that's all it is. What they're really trying to do is they're trying to limit the idea of this divine universe concept. They're saying, well, that's just impossible. And
they want to make everything physical.
Yeah, but not to say that physical can't be miraculous is the point. We were seeing all the time. No. We're talking about wave particle acceleration and corpuscles. Clearly, there's more to the theories than. Did you just notice this? As I was flipping through here, I saw this menorah. I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah, do me a favor, man. Turn the menorah. Okay, that's not the best picture to do it with, but turn the menorah upside down, and you pretty much got our realms.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how I'm supposed to really quickly turn that upside down.
And you got the north pole with the polar star, kind of thing in the middle going all up.
It has to have an odd
guess you can call
because you have the axis, the central candle.
Yeah. That was just a random thought I had a long time ago. Turn it upside down, and you got a flat Earth structure with the polar star, with the star in the top there.
It's weird.
Well, it's a domish structure.
Look up this movie.
Different realms.
KS saw it, but keep it upside down like that. Then look up this movie. Yeah, have it juxtapose this. There's this movie. Oh man, I got brain. Oh, I'm trying to think. It's this movie where people are stuck in these force fields and they have to live the same loop over and over again.
Yeah. Well, that's a good question right now.
Remember, it resets, and whenever they die, you watched it.
Yeah, I don't remember right now. I forget that name all the time.
So I've been kind of avoiding going into Khazarians. If you haven't been able to tell you're a guy, just because not because I'm afraid to, but because there's a lot of stuff that we need to explain first when we get into it. Having said that, let me just say my speculation is that somebody took that line drawn across the sand and then moved it and then turned it sideways and put half of the people on one side, half of the people on the other side, and put another half of one people in that side and another half of another people on that side. So I think it's just like the wrong way to go about investigating at this point is to worry about that. But there's a lot more to it. And yes, we're going to get into it because historically that is something that happened. And it's happened multiple times, actually. You can look at the Soviet Zion movement in the 20th century where they started bringing Russians to Israel. So yeah, the answer is many times over. Yes, there's a connection.
I won't say about me, but yeah, very much.
I mean, but the thing is also, it's like, it's really weird when we start talking about like who is who in the 12th century, because Damascus and Jerusalem and the Crusades and Scandinavia and the Cordoba Caliphate and Spain and Andalusia, like these are all connected places. At that point, this is more connected than America. Like people are less likely to have visited each other in our time than probably then.
But it's not so much the people; it's more it's the royals and the government families. They are connected.
Yeah,
pretty
but
much everywhere.
But the people are connected to each other because you have spy versus spy. So you have castes. So you have merchants that know other merchants, and then they know their own local town, but their cousin is working in another town, so they can get what they need off the boat. So there is a huge connection of different groups of people in different states, because each one of them has to be connected with the group in another state. So, I mean...
By that, you mean states and sovereign territories?
Correct. I'm mentioning sovereign territories as, kingdoms that have legitimacy of violence, as Weber defines them. But I'm also saying a nation is not the same as a state, and a tribe is even different than a nation. So you've got families even, and families become really, that's where I think if people get the weirdest about it is where we talk about families, but if you talk about Ford and Firestone, this is one of my favorite examples.
Kingdoms.
Yeah, you wonder about kingdoms and how they married each other off to each other. Well, it's still going on, Well, it's weird that I've got this upside down menorah, so I think I'm done.
Okay, the reason I wanted you to look up, it's called Endless. The movie is called Endless, and look up Force Field. There's an article about it. It's like, what's the meaning of endless? If you look up this picture, I don't know how to find it. Endless
meaning force field. Is that what I'm looking for? Spoilers. Endless meaning explained.
It's, I think 2017. Yeah, it's a spoiler article.
Okay, yeah.
I mean,
so by the way, guys, we're trying to spoil your fun and show you the meaning of the universe. So
it's like the idea that you're trapped in a time loop, and you probably have to scroll way down where maybe it has a picture, maybe it doesn't. No, well, I see okay, I don't know how to find it. I mean, I have it on my Facebook, but
Endless 2017 time loop.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just the force field concept that you're on a small portion of the whole, and you're trapped in that one little portion. You have to keep redoing until you find a way to break it.
I think that's a big thing also, is this idea of, when we were talking about simulation theory and reincarnation and hyper incarnation and simultaneous existence, there's probably something to be said for you need to do it right or else you end up in hell. That something that atheists really don't like, because atheists are like, oh well, it just ends after you're done having fun.
Must be very sad to think like that.
Well, it's actually probably very liberating, but the problem is,
how can it be liberating thinking you are just a nothing, dying and gone forever?
I don't know. I know some people that sleep at night a lot better.
It's an excuse to not feel scared or not feel whatever.
Well, no, because I know one guy who will tell you his dad told him that there's a chance and all, but it's probable there's nothing after death. So you should live your life the best you can, because this is probably it. And that kid was probably careful and safe and made sure not to I know kids who believe in reincarnation that I don't want to drive with. You know what I'm saying? And so I'm thinking that this guy probably cared more about his life and his future because of believing that it was a one-shot deal. And that's not bad either. But
well, no, in a sense it's not, but you won't get anywhere if you keep doing that. You'll just be stuck in a loop.
That's part of game theory. I mean,
But the thing is, like, what you can
It's like
say to a
people
kid, what I would say to a kid is like, like, yeah, it's possible that this is like, you could just evaporate into nothingness at any point. But there's a lot of math that seems to prove, or at least it has a pretty good case for existence before this moment and existence for after it. And so it's pretty likely that because you cannot really destroy anything, but you can change it, that there's something there. And so maybe it matters what you do now about tomorrow. That
And
was
since
probably
when has
before.
everything came from? Since
Freaked
since
out.
when did something come from nothing? When did we start? How in science can you find something coming from absolutely nothing? That doesn't exist. That doesn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, like there's something. I mean, the idea is that there's darkness and there's waters and there's like space waters in the firmament. I think and even something I was thinking about is like the idea of mycelial space beyond. Because if we're inside of a mushroom of some kind, space, you can look inside space and it looks kind of like a mushroom. At least the internodal patterns are. So outside of water and pools and light going through refractions of water, like it could very well be that there's something that uses water to move it back and forth, and that's some sort of a network. And that's pretty far out stuff. But the idea of mycelium in space is pretty well fought for by a lot of scientists and scientists.
Even the air you put you put your hand through. Try putting your hand back and forward in the air hard. That you can feel the air, because even the air is it's a kind of liquid. Even air is a kind of liquid.
Well,
but people don't think the air is liquid, but it is a kind of liquid.
Well, everything's separated by, the 4 stages of matter. There's solid, nothing moves. Liquid and gas, they're separate stages, but they both have freedom of movement, degrees of freedom. And plasma, freedom, but not only movement, it has electrical freedom.
And air can fucking, a big wind can push you down, move you around even. And that's something you can't see, but it will beat your ass if you don't watch out.
Yeah. That's the whole problem.
There was a guy who, this is really funny. I was trying to the world's largest mushroom, and all I can find all of a sudden is, debunking the world's largest mushroom because someone posted some picture like this in front of it of a giant big mushroom. But there actually is the world's largest mushroom at 5 or 7 miles. There's 2 miles in Oregon. There's 5 miles. Actually, we think there's one that's in the atmosphere that's probably covering the entire planet, which is pretty trippy. But the concept of there being a 1 cell wall thick Opisthokonta that's huge, and if you start looking into like ancient, like fossilized fungi from like thousands of years ago, giant ones, we know that basically they were the first things to come onto land. In fact, land was probably made of mushrooms because they broke down the rock.
Fungus is called stromatolite, I think.
I'm sorry, I don't know why I said probably. We know it because we know the chemical process from which it's done that breaks down the rock into soils. But this is a giant mushroom. So the idea of the Leviathan being a Opisthokonta is not. It'd basically be. I would walk away if someone said that they wouldn't consider it, like in the middle of a conversation, because it's just too likely that there were giant Opisthokontas that were, actually eating people. We're talking about Venus flytraps. We're talking about the Rafflesia. We're talking about how mushrooms are able to spread themselves around.
Oh yeah.
And, they can shoot themselves like guns, like faster than a sneeze. Like,
it doesn't have anything that wants to eat it. Then just the normal dictates of evolution say it's going to grow to become as big and as successful as possible. So
yeah, like depending on what it decided to be, but we really think that there were something like hundreds of feet tall mushrooms, and that's what that guy would be looking at right there, who was knocked over. I'm not sure, but that would also be kind of an interesting. So we're talking about DNA at some point. So
remember that Super Mario movie they made in the 90s? Remember they turned the king into it's a human king. And they
I can't hear you very well. Can you speak closer to your mic?
Sorry, I have my mic like right on my mouth, but I put it low. Super Mario, the movie. Look up Super Mario movie King.
Movie what?
King. Or Mushroom.
Yeah. Super Mario.
The Mushroom King.
Yeah, he's played by
Yeah. Okay, but
not only I love that actor. It's
they transform him with some type of weapon.
King Koopa?
Koopa is played by Dennis Hopper. Dennis Hopper, right?
Samantha, whatever her name is. Was it her father was the king and he gets transformed?
Yeah, and she's a mushroom, right? That's right. Yeah.
Her father's mushroom.
Oh man, Mario Brothers is all about this, guys. He's on it. It's true.
He becomes a giant fungus, or just type in fungus.
Okay, so
Super
wait,
Mario-
let's explain this. Let's explain this the best way we can. So the Mario Brothers movie, which a lot of people were offended about because it was not like the video game, but actually really is a story of these two Italian brothers that climb into a sewer, and when they get down there, they find this kingdom, and inside the kingdom is a reptilian humanoid race that have been waiting to take their place on the planet, and they can actually devolve and evolve humanoids into, you know, and reptiles and humanoids and make them smarter and dumber. But they have a machine that is this mushroom hive mind. And, you know, he uses the mushroom hive mind in order to make it happen. The problem is that I need to find a picture of that mushroom.
You just type in fungus or fungus king, you know.
Yeah. Okay, so the problem is eventually when they evolve back to the very earliest stage, they turn into fungus because that's where the reptiles and the humans and they all meet again, is their primordial DNA goo. And also the princess is a fungus, I think is the point. She's the mushroom. Princess Toadstool herself is a humanoid with mushroom DNA.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or she's a mushroom with human DNA, or she got all the DNA.
If they could turn her father into a mushroom, it means that she's also a descendant of a mushroom.
But the thing is, everyone's descendant of a mushroom, right? Because animals, unless you're a plant, if you're a plant, you're not. But if you're an animal or you're a mushroom, you're descendant from a mushroom. Basically.
We all got a lot of fungi in our bodies.
An animal or reptile?
Pretty fun guy, I think. Couldn't help it.
Wait.
So,
Even cancer. Cancer is a fungus.
Well, you know, you're a bus is the best way. I don't know if that's the best way to look at you, but someone told me that when I was a kid, and it probably affected and impacted me too much. But the idea is the human race is really a bunch of a fleet of buses, and the bus have tons of schools of kids in them, and those, you know, some of them are from, you know, you got bacteria and gut fauna and everything else like that, and consciousness.
Hey, don't they cross over to another dimension in the movie? Like when they go, was it the sewers? It's like they have to.
It's the underworld.
I believe.
I don't remember if it was a Stargate or if it was the underworld.
Someone in the chat might have seen it, but
we have 3 types of. Oh yeah, San Francisco. No, go on. Well, I would also say remember that Terrence McKenna died, guys, and
I had a mentor for
Terrence McKenna had brain rot. So I mean, I really don't want to be all like, "Hey, conspiracy that this guy, you know, died of brain rot from eating mushrooms that were untested or nothing," but like, seems like a pretty reasonable conspiracy. If you guys want to tell me he was assassinated, I'm totally down to listen, but I bet you maybe he could have just, like, as Ken Kesey said, when you get the message, hang up the phone and go do the, you know, go do the mission, right? Like when you're done, like you get the message, hang up the phone and do the mission. I don't know, my opinion, but
I mean, he could have came and done what he was here to do, and at that point, you know, bigger things were in motion.
Right, that's true. I mean, like meta time wave is now music. That's pretty legit.
He's the one who created that whole thing.
But I don't know. I do think it's something where it's like it's one of these examples of how these things were not acceptable or embraceable by like 90% of people.
That's your symmetry right there. Your dodecahedral symmetry is in DNA. Save that image. Save that, or at least link to it. I need that.
All right, I'll put that.
It's hard to find a good one where they really show it like that, the axial look.
I've been meaning to get some of my homework out, guys. If you go in the Patreon, if you add to the Patreon, I'm going to add a link to some stuff that I literally can't or I would put out, but it's like homework stuff from my old nanotech classes, and we're going to look into some of this stuff because, as someone has pointed out, a lot of this particle accelerator stuff and the study of physics is just really old studies of arabesques and symmetry, and we're realizing that we can measure it and see it do exactly these logical folds that we can predict through emulated simulators, which is, you know, what is not real, but what we use to predict what reality would be. And I keep trying to point out the digital Noah's Archive thing. I think that's, you know, if you really want the like DNA is a collection. Okay, so the word Adam, you guys know what Adam and Eve is, right?
Yeah.
Adam is really a word that comes. Yeah,
Atom.
Adamu means animals. It means animals in plural.
Well, that would make her.
In Sumerian. I'm trying
I'm
to.
a huge.
Okay, but literally, it's the word atom.
Well, yeah, now. But if you look for like a Hebrew origin, you can't. All you'll find is a Sumerian origin. And the Sumerian origin was that the word Adam, the word Adam in Sumerian means the animals. It means the created animals. Kind of like, it's an interesting thing about the original Garden of Eden, because Eden means, it's a paradise of Eden. Paradise means empire. Also, in a gardener is a paradiser, and a paradiser is an emperor, because an emperor takes care of his garden, and so he's growing the Adam. But then Adam knows Tiamat, and Tiamat is made of Adam, but it's like not Adam, which is different than Lilith and that whole esoteric thing. But yeah, it's interesting when people then compare it to the modern esotericism of Jack Parsons, because that's where we start to, I mean, I wouldn't say the beginning of it, because, Isaac Newton and Descartes, but Jack Parsons is where people in the 20th century say, oh, duh, yeah, okay, that's why my grandpa studied the occult, because I'm in college and I want to do physics. Yeah, and that's really where it becomes like, people are just like, oh, that fairy tale, I'm so glad that they told me that fairy tale.
Zero results in actual college physics, none.
Like all of a sudden they're all real interested in visiting Eris and Saturn. Their grandpa's talking about it, and all of a sudden they want to visit. They want to know all about it. So I mean, there's a lot there to the metaphors of modern chemistry and science to the old Sumerian ones.
I was gonna say, this is what I forgot. When you're showing the mineral earlier, there's this guy on YouTube. I don't know if he's the first person like in modern times, but he figured out something called the Bible Code.
Yeah, the mega code.
Whatever it's called, the Bible Code or mega code.
Actually, I'm glad we're talking about all this stuff, because I've got some stuff in my new video that's talking about the Bible Code. Basically, the way they found the Bible Code was originally, okay, so you guys know about the Dead Sea Scrolls. Let me see if I can find my thing on this, actually, because I have a good amount of it. Tartary Myths, Bible. Basically, when they found the Dead Sea Scrolls, there was like one book. There's a couple books. There's a lot of stuff that's in the dead that confirms that, okay, let's go back. Basically, that we have a lot of questions about Jesus because it's different than modernity, because we have the story that the Caesar Vespasian reinvented the Messiah with the help of Bar Matthias Josephus, who told Vespasian he would win this war and become an emperor. He liked that, so he kind of went off and made Bar Matthias his bitch. And then he privatized the Torah, and then he burned the rest of it, and then they rewrote history. But one of the things that they did while they did that was they added some stuff, and the Dead Sea Scrolls kind of reveals this, because the Dead Sea Scrolls has missing from it. I mean, we say, oh yeah, it's got everything. No, it doesn't. It doesn't have the Book of Esther. It doesn't have a bunch of passages and missing words. And so these added words and some things are missing. But Esther is a weird book, because basically it hides this. If you read it vertically, instead of or left to right, I forget which way this is done, because I haven't done this since I was like young. But you can read Yahweh and let our royal, let this day be graced by the King Aman, Yabo Hamalek Vem Haman Hayom. And it's all, this is where they really were like, oh, because there's no reason for this book to be in the Bible except for the fact that it's about the fall, and but also it revealed the code for the first time. So once people started looking for Bible codes, which, people have always been looking for Bible codes, but once Goy started looking for Bible codes and computers, they noticed that there's a lot of stuff in this, Omega code started to emerge. And you can do these cross sections, and it's a lot like the, what's the name of that? The codex that everyone is all about now. There's
codex. This codex means law, I think, or laws.
The Gaia had like a thing on it recently, like the.
I honestly don't trust Gaia, but it's not.
Yeah, no, I don't either. But that's the thing. They talk about things sometimes, and that's why I'd rather talk about it in open source versions.
Far on that platform.
I mean, they've made a bunch of money. I'll give them that, but like, I think that they should have to release everything they make after like 2 years or something. They should have a rule where they open source their old material. That's
because okay, you understand that it's simply this: people value something you pay for more than something that's free on YouTube, like what we're doing
Right.
now.
That's
So
true.
they come and they make the association between price and quality, or price and truthfulness. So the whole Gaia thing, and I don't know the background of that, but
Well, yeah, I know a couple of the guys actually have seen, and I'm interested in talking to them actually because what really turned me off of those when David Wilcock had like a weird thing
well,
with
I don't
it.
know. I don't know what happened, but I mean,
Yeah, I mean, we'll get into it at some point. I definitely want to like mention, but the thing is, there's a lot of people involved with it that are really good people, and like I could easily see myself, trying to do stuff with them. I just want to make sure that the contracts are right for everyone to see stuff, because I don't like the idea. The thing is, I find esotericism to be a little on the edge, and you got to be careful about that. And it's cool if you're talking about it in the open, but. So we're gonna talk about this movie, not the Life of Pi. That's another movie we'll talk about someday about a kid who has a metaphor for his reality. But Pi is a movie that you need to see. It's 88 minutes long, and if it's your first introduction to sacred geometry and sacred mathematics, or the Kabbalah, or anything really that has to do with this, it's probably a good start because it shows you what other people are like who've obsessed about this all of their lives and probably for lifetimes. In fact, not probably, definitely for lifetimes, And so it's about these guys that find this other guy. I mean, they're rabbis, and they found this guy who knows the name of God, but like the actual name, and it's 256 digits long, and it fits in the computer. And this other corporation is trying to get it, and they're going to give him a new computer, and he lives alone, and he's all scared of telling people it. But once
ultimate power for technology, if you
he knows the
understand.
name of God, he can predict the stock market and the weather.
Of course you can. There's an actual I'd rather not talk about, but yeah, there's a book on predicting the stock market using time codes.
Yeah.
Just I don't even remember the name, but I'm sure I could at some point. It's based on the golden ratio in the stock market. So if you type in golden ratio stock market book or
Oh yeah,
Fibonacci
this
stock
link
market,
here.
they call it the Fibonacci wave.
Check that later.
There's a name for the guy who Fibonacci wave stock market. It's named after a guy, so it's gonna have the guy's name, and that's yeah, the Elliott wave theory. This guy, he was a mathematician. I don't know where he's from.
Oh yeah, Elliott Wave from India.
Elliott wave. Yeah, Elliott wave.
Mm-hmm.
Everything
He
is
used 1870s to 1940s.
Still works.
So yeah, we got to look into this. What would you say the patterns are? How would you describe it?
Honestly, this is a lot more true in forex markets. Forex is foreign exchange than in stocks. Because stocks are a lot more affected by things like the news or like a CEO, like when Steve Jobs died. But what it essentially is that everything moves in trends. Just like, well, if you type in global, it's a site called World Trend Institute, I think, or World, it might be called WTI, Trend Research Institute, forecasting pretty much everything. They have a wonderful introductory video on YouTube. If you type in those 3 words, anyone who wants to. But no, I don't know if this is the site or not. Anyway,
Well, we can figure it out. We can look into it. So another thing
down fractally, where the trend repeats at every layer. Happens at like the day-to-day layer, the week-to-week, month, year to year. And whenever it's moving in one direction, you can see this pattern forever. It's always going to have a self-repeating pattern to it. It switches when you trade. So it's basically always on the move in one direction or another. And the small little squiggles are also in a trend. But
this reminds me of the sip and dip at Bitcoin.
Yeah, of course it is.
Right. Got it.
Yeah, that's all there is to say about that.
With the bull,
But we went into gravity before and stuff like electromagnetics a little.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
before I did find it, but the talk goes off to the next topic constantly. So I found a link I wanted to show. I
absolutely.
wrote it to you in
Where's
the Hangouts window.
I got something related to that Thai.
And
Thing.
it's Santos Bonacci. So
Oh, that's
you
wonderful.
just write the the credits or whatever in the video after.
Okay.
But this start part of it is amazing. And you mentioned the Torah before. See, this is a Torah's field, and this shows pretty much, if you want to believe it, pretty much how our world is and what it is. And that's where I say that the name the Torah comes from Torah's field.
Yeah, it is. I would say that's true.
And watch this stuff. You if you go a little back and play that part, because you can see how
trouble for this clip. I'm gonna have to block this out. We'll see how it goes.
It's Santos Bonacci's video. If you just write the credits, and stuff, I don't think it's a problem.
No, this is some guy who's like his entire life is the.
He's a hardcore truth guy.
He's got a patent on this thing. Yeah,
he really knows what he's talking about.
Yeah. And they have that temple in at CERN. It's an upside down.
Yeah, but the thing is, you see the two structures there, and you should see how they work when he puts that stuff in.
And they react off each other, and they form back the same symmetry. They return
how
to
they create that pattern in the center of the two magnetic fields.
Right. They always return to a symmetry like water.
How it automatically does that, and it has this centerpiece. So this centerpiece where they spin around would be where we are. And what you call gravity would be the effect of these two different magnetic poles.
And the relationship could be what we're talking about corpuscles and like symmetry when they're happening.
But you see, there's two sides of the disk. There's that one up there, that one down there. So that's above, so below. It's the same on both sides, and both sides is exactly the same. If you stand on one side, up is down, down is up, and it's the exact same on the other side. It's just opposite.
They self-organize.
And it's not totally complete yet. I think he's missing one ball.
That's an area of high magnetic flux, I would say.
But it comes back to its shape eventually.
It's divergent magnetic flux too, because the flux curves through the hole and back. It's like the sword falling off the edge.
And this video shows a lot of stuff.
Because there's a hole in these two.
And you see, it doesn't matter what you do. It will keep creating the same patterns.
I'm going to copy this video for you guys into the link here. I'm also going to put it in the video description when it's done for anybody who wants to check that out.
Watch the whole series. There's a playlist of this. Yeah,
but this video is great, and he mentioned some of the people who he shows videos from in that video, who goes even deeper into this stuff. And it's amazing.
Somebody was sorry? Say it again, Ben?
I was just wondering. I know I shared that with you in chat one time, but it's fascinating. Oh yeah, I need to watch so many movies. There's also a movie called Source Code, which is about kind of like reincarnation, but with loops.
I was going to mention because you were talking about the Bible code. The Omega Code's pretty interesting.
Is a representation of the Bible code.
The Bible Code's nuts. This Omega Code movie has the Starship Troopers Casper Van Dien in it, and it also has the guy from Austin Powers and Logan's Run as
that's no accident. When did it come out?
As the Antichrist. And it's a Christian movie that came out in like 1999, I think. And I saw it was a made for videotape movie in 1999, and it was made for videotape, and it was it is weird, but it's very much like this blonde guy takes over the UN, and he's British, and he's got control of and it's very much the end of times Revelation series if it was today. But this meanwhile, the Casper Van Dien guy's got this code, and he can predict the future better than Nostradamus ever could, because he can put it into a computer and pull out words. And similar to that movie Pi.
That's what the Illuminati's goal is, to be able to completely 100% predict, or they want to predict at the limit of what's possible. Look up something called the Foundation series by Isaac Asimov, and just read the intro.
Yeah, guys, the Foundation series.
Can you explain, because I don't know much about it, but can you explain what the Omega Point is?
Yeah, well, so the
Okay.
Omega Point is supposed to be kind of like a final penultimum after we've evolved beyond. So there's the Psychozoic era and the Mesozoic era, and there's the matter era. Once we get to a point of like humanoids and into churches, into communities, then there's like type 2 civilizations. But the final Omega Point is essentially, and this is what kind of confuses people and gets people to argue, is like to be either like a Mormon, deity, like where you control a civilization, or at very least to be fully able to serve God in some way, whatever that means in the Omega Point. But it really comes down to like beating entropy, producing more energy than you're using to exist through working with others, and using that to heal and feed others.
Yeah. Well, I wish John was awake. John, you awake? John could explain that entire. Like I've talked to John for a year and 2-3 months about that.
You can wake him up by just giving him a call on Skype.
We'll get him back. He's great. He's got a lot of
Dum,
information.
dum, dum. Wake him up.
That what you would call becoming an Omega being is like it's more like a deity as we see it, or some people call it angelics, or yes, you can talk about that. But
I think
it says that it's something that everyone's going towards, one way or another.
Yeah.
Even all these evil fucking bastards.
As they say,
to get to that point.
go inwards, go within, or go inwards, not outwards. It's the same on this electromagnetic torus field world. If you think you live there, it's the same thing. You gotta go to the center. That's why they show a maze in so many TV shows and movies. Especially Westworld. This guy is trying to find the maze, and it's said to be in the center of this fake world he's in.
When Thor lands, I'm talking about the first one. I've never fully seen. Doesn't he leave a mark on the ground? It's like a maze, and it's Old Norse.
That maze, the maze is a real thing. It's shown all over the history. People draw them.
Symbols create reality. Language.
And the maze looks like a brain.
Of course it is. Yeah.
One thing I was thinking about was the Space Trilogy by C.S. Lewis. Have you guys ever read that? It's like Narnia in space, kind of, but he's got to fight the humans are trying to reincarnate Merlin, and so they have to get Merlin back because they know Merlin can practice magic. So if they reincarnate him, he'll be able to practice magic again. It's a very interesting book. It's trilogy.
The elites believe in that too. When they want to, summon their Antichrist, they're trying to make like the opposite polarity of Merlin.
Oh, Martin Lead went into Merlin's family. He talked about that, and the mother and everything, being real.
Yeah,
and not that long ago.
I actually have a pretty good thing I want to talk about at some point with Merlin, because Merlin has a lot to do with the Setian Carthaginians in Africa. And if you know about Scotland and the bagpipes, they come from the Romans or whoever they are, bringing them up with them. The goatskin bagpipes come from Africa and Carthage. That's they're originally from. Like, there's a lot we know about the Picts now. And the Picts were a people before the Celts, and were these kind of dark, wild people that dyed their skin blue, which is kind of interesting.
That's kind of like the Indians.
Well, we think about the Krishna consciousness and blue people. Exactly. There's a lot of things going on with that. But
then you wonder who is why did they make the cartoon the Smurfs living in those mushrooms that has DMT? What are they called? The red ones with white dots.
So in short, the Picts, Papa Smurf, you mean the mushroom, the cordyceps? No, the what's that called? The red one.
We call it the fly mushroom in Denmark.
The fly agaric and the Amanita muscaria.
Oh, yeah, it contains DMT and everything,
Well, actually, the Amanita muscaria contains the other chemical. I forget what that is. But
mescaline? Is it mescaline?
It has I don't know. You guys can be careful with mushrooms. The point is, I was looking at this other thing. Where'd that go? No, gone.
Was it that thing with all those interesting names I've never heard of?
Picked Warriors, the Smurfs. Okay, so the Picts are they're the Frieslanders, I think. The Picts are the original Frieslanders before the island was taken by the Celts and the Saxons. And so I think that's where you get into Merlin. Merlin was a conqueror probably of the Picts, I think.
Yeah.
Or maybe he was a bastard son of a half and half because he knew magic, but he also was working for this new king. And the big thing was Uther. And Uther was the father of Arthur. And he made it possible for him to rape the mother by pretending to be this other knight, which is very much the Davidian story. Is it David or Daniel? David, right? No, King Daniel. I forget. Which one of them had their friend murdered so they could take their wife? King David, I think.
I don't remember.
This is beyond my.
King David, I think, committed adultery, and he liked his wife so much that Bathsheba, 1660s. Interesting point. So basically, the idea was that David had 7 generations of bad karma for murdering his best friend. And the Bible has a lot of bad karma. Yeah, it's really nuts. Like, hey, but guess what? Your kids are screwed. Or rather, hey, kid, guess what? Your dad screwed up. But that's pretty funny, actually. This is
unfortunately. I don't know if I should say this.
Yeah, I know. These days, there's a lot less iconography out there. Guys, I would recommend avoiding religions and cults that have poor and low amounts of iconography. If you're going to get involved with one, make sure at least they've got enough images worth your time.
Yeah, and I would say don't take them literally, and don't take them literally at all unless you can actually research enough to find out if this person was even a person and stuff. Like even the name Jesus never existed really. So they took and manipulated the what is it, Ben? What's it called? It adds up to the same thing as the old name, but it's just not the real name, and it's not even a physical person.
Yeshua is a name, and there's this whole thing
and that's not even the real name as well.
The mark of an educated mind is to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it, and so I think that's the thing when it comes to the Yeshua thing, because I'm pretty convinced that there was a dude that existed. There's
been lots of dudes,
that were pretty much though like had been to India or had lived in Alexandria and there's a lot of history there. But we've kind of, also got this other thing, which is the Caesarian adaptation. And so, sure, the fact that it's mostly missing stuff, like his 15 or so years of life, 16 or 18 years of life that's just gone.
But mixing the name together, Jesus and Christ, that's just mockery, that's blasphemy in itself.
Well, I mean,
unless people see it as a guy of Christ, but it's not a name.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's supposed to be son of man, right? He's like, you're not yours, not mine. But I need to see this thing. I didn't know that Giles, Anthony Stewart Head was playing in some Merlin Arthur stuff. I want to know more about that.
Look at the symbols he got there.
Yeah.
The flower of life symbol on his.
Yeah, that's. Of course it is.
That's pretty much the thing that video before showed with the that's pretty much the pattern that was just shown in that video before he linked to you with the electromagnetic stuff. That's pretty much what those balls were doing in the center.
But notice
that pattern.
He's got a very Prussian helmet, Uther, the king of Arthur's father, and also his staff he's holding is.
And doesn't he have like a dragon or a griffin under his on his shirt thing?
Very Tartarian. So
exactly.
Yes.
And the flower down there.
Might be an eagle. It might be the Roman eagle.
But the Romans is just one people who under the Tartarian Empire.
Well,
nothing special.
I'm gonna get into dinosaurs at some point because dragons and the large lizards that existed are numerous. Like you go into Egyptian dinosaur, like one of the oldest.
But you also have to go look into to where the symbol of the dragon comes from and what the symbol of the dragon actually means, because it doesn't really mean a dragon at all in masonry. It means electromagnetism and.
Well, that's when you're talking about leviathans. When you're talking about leviathans and flying metal machines, that kind of dragon is a whole separate thing. But there are actually like giant birds, giant lizards. that were alive at some point, and we killed them off. More likely,
Oh yeah, there was.
an
Yeah.
earthquake or something that caused it. It was that there was murder and poaching or hunting or something. And the other thing we know now also is like the
Did you ever see that movie Dragon Age? I've never seen it, but I remember all the ads for it.
we now know that Tyrannosaurus had feathers, which is an interesting too.
If it even existed is the question, because
No, I mean I pretty strongly believe that these fossils or whatever we're looking at of like Tyrannosaurus rexes, they were real. They're just nothing like you were told. They're giant fucking birds, and they can run, and they couldn't stand up straight because it would break their back. But they could run, and they were scavengers, and they were related to the vultures. They're very closely related.
See, I have this theory that that dinosaurs, many of the giant things, like dinosaurs would come from other realms outside of ours, because there's the talk about the reptilian race coming from another realm, broke into ours in a certain special time where they're able to. So it could be, beings from an outer realm who walked in here when the doors, whatever the domes or whatever you want to believe in, when the entrance was open back in the day. They walked in here, they lived here in certain numbers, and when it closed again, people wiped them out as good as possible. But
well, you've cut me to quick, sir, because I've been trying to hold that as a suspenseful theory for the next video we're working on. But that is basically a big part of this. Is this alternative to the asteroid theory? Is the extra dimensional or extraterrestrial theory? This idea that the iridium wave is associated with another world or a convergence of several different worlds.
NASA calls it the Van Allen belts. They do say belts. More belts, but they don't talk about more than one. But they do mention the belts as many belts, but they don't talk about other than one.
Right, but there's an interaction between multiple realms, and it's something I've been wanting. I guess, you know what, this is probably the time that we can talk about the Ninja Turtles. At some point we were saying I wanted to do something, and someone said that they thought it was the right thing to do. Let me see, where is it at?
By the way, I don't know anything about this slide. You're going to have to teach me after chat. I don't know about the Book of Esther.
You don't know anything about what?
Book of Esther. I've never heard of that.
What?
The Book of Esther? Oh, it's really, you should probably watch the VeggieTales, or there's like a movie about it. But basically, the Book of Esther is, I'm going to really quickly, now that you brought that up because it's worth it, is that she was a queen who's she's a good Jewish princess who was decided not to be murdered or sold into a harem, and then she ends up becoming in love with the king of Persia, or a conqueror, and you see the little, right there.
That's a pretty unrealistic Persian look.
Hey, this is the media. But the point is,
this is the fake version. The Persians were Aryan looking.
Yeah. So there you go, diet. But the point is the same, that she became the wife of the king, essentially. I think that's right, or maybe
the Persian mummies are redheaded, people with big redheaded people.
It's basically a story about how the princess Esther, or the queen of the Jewish people, stopped the destruction of the people in the land of Judea after it was conquered. And so it's a very important story because it's sort of maybe a metaphor for what happened after the sacking of Judea and the sacking of Rome by Vespasian. But it's it's an important story. But we were going to talk really quickly about the Van Allen radiation belt.
Yeah.
And it's important because we're talking about the ELF band, the extremely low frequency belt, and there's this idea that there are ringing like kind of the bells. Someone's talking about sound radiation and power of sound. Well, yes, the power of sound and radiation are extreme.
It's kind of like a frequency belt, It holds in a certain frequency of existence, and there's a different frequency in all of the different realms, lower and higher vibration realms, lower and higher vibration frequencies. The 432 hertz, that frequency that people use to heal and relax to, because it's the frequency of our nature. It's the frequency of this realm. Pretty much, as close as they come.
432?
Yeah, but there's a-
432 hertz.
But there's a spectrum of more that you experience because of the fact that we've got an interaction with another frequency or another realm. So it also explains a lot about gravity. If you ever looked at sound anti-gravity, if you really want to mess with your mind about gravity, look at what sound does. If you turn on a speaker over sound, you can water can float. You can literally anti-gravity.
That's trapping it in a
Yeah.
standing wave. That's trapping
That's-
it at wave crest.
That's
Right.
again because it's electromagnetic. You know, it's
Well,
not
that goes
gravity
to
as
that
such.
thing that
Well, I mean, it's the point
you know
is
that thing you
gravity's
took on
not even.
pi?
Yeah, because it's
So-
not what people are told.
Yeah, gravity's not even what people were told, and so what it is about the electron, the ionic breeze, and so the ions are pushed off of the particles, and it creates a polarity where everything runs to one side.
A
You got-
certain sound vibration can make a gigantic stone hover in the air. You know, you just have to have a strong enough device to do it.
Interesting. If you have sound in a crystal, because crystals are an ordered lattice of atoms like grid work. In a crystal, it's called a phonon, and it has different properties. I mean, you know about this because you're from the semiconductor background. It
Yeah,
has
see, they
different
do this already.
So yeah,
Nice.
just using sound, you can lift rocks and things like that. So anybody who was wondering about how they levitate things in ancient times using vibrations,
What the heck is this?
you want to do it sometime, do it. It's not hard. It's actually just requires a
That's the
subway.
video I wanted to find. Actually, this exact one.
And I'll put a link to this video in the thing also, because there's a ton of examples of this. But if you've ever seen some of this NASA footage, I wouldn't be surprised if when they're using that stuff, because I've seen it myself in concerts.
Yeah, try to find a sorry. Go
That
on, man.
GIF with the Russian something.ru, levitation, the.levitation at something.ru. Save that, dude.
Yeah, I put that a link into the chat just now, guys, if you want to, and I'll save it more. But so really quickly, I was going to talk about Ninja Turtles because
Yeah.
what the hell, why not? And we'll go back just a second here. Is like this idea of luminary realms, and our soul, our system. So that's where the Kabbalah gets into this idea of this, the solar system, and the visiting of these realms of space without a pen or without a spaceship. So if you wanted to bring something back from one of these realms, what you needed to do is you needed to actually use a DeLorean or a submarine to get there, not just your mind, and that's kind of what the Ninja Turtles is about. There's all of this. Ninja Turtles is really about Krang. Krang is this brain, he's a bad guy. But, in this story about these 10th age mutated tortoises that practiced martial arts, he's not just a brain. He's actually representative of something that came over through the Philadelphia experiments. I mean,
there's actually a being like that in is it Japanese culture? There's like a frog humanoid.
Well, I'll get there, but trust me, I'll get there. But the thing is with the Ninja Turtles, they are representative of, they're from a Philadelphia experiment. The guy who made it was from Philadelphia. It was really a comic book.
Comprehension. I'm actually going to try to move to Philadelphia. There's a school in there I want to go to.
So basically when he created the Ninja Turtles, it was because this experiment had happened where a boat had been sent to another dimension and back. It was supposed to disappear, and when it got back, people were half embedded in the steel of the boat, in the concrete. It was just insane. People screaming. It was weeks later or something, and then they disappeared again. And I hear that they appeared again decades later and then disappeared again, or that maybe they were seen hundreds of years earlier, but it was just some crazy thing that happened because they realigned in a different orientation of space-time. So the Philadelphia experiment really inspired a lot of people, but basically the comic book, The Ninja Turtles, is about this idea that there's a breakaway civilization that the government has been creating in Dimension X, and then that's what the Korean War and a lot of people being brought over was for. By the way, whoever's got the thing ringing in the background, if you wanted to if you mute that the chat window, but
what's ringing?
There's I hear the chat blinking in the background. If someone can hear the yeah, it's gone out. Cool.
Oh, okay, I can't hear that.
So the Dimension X has this concept that we're bringing over to it all of these spaceships, all of these submarines. Mostly submarines were being brought because you don't need them to go to space. In fact, you can't, but you can go through a dimension and then you end up in this Dimension X. And all of our best resources and all of our best teams, and one of the reasons we've lost so much of our economy is because they're draining it into this Dimension X. Like I said, this is just in a comic book. But the thing is, Krang is not just this brain. He's this lizard that lost his body. He's basically Godzilla. And he, they sent him from Dimension X to Earth. And once he got from Dimension, whoever, I think it might be you. Is it on? Yeah, mute that. Mute the beeping. I think it's KS. KS, can you turn off the beeping?
I don't have any beeping or anything on at all. I don't know where. I don't even hear anything.
I think it's a chat window. Maybe
I don't hear any beeping on my end.
Is it me? I'm so embarrassed. It's probably my fault.
It must be you.
That's great. I deserve this. Okay, so we'll try that again. Krang.
Cyber slap.
Oh, your fault, guys. So we've got this this brain who was sent by Dimension X, and he lost his body in the process, and so he's really upset about it. And so in the cartoon, he looks kind of cute, his parents don't get too upset, but really the kids see what he is. He's this evil, gnarly, tentacle like monster with teeth in the brain. And so once he gets from Dimension X, all of these people are freaked out at him because he says to Shredder, who is from the Yakuza, that he will give him all the technology he needs and make him powerful after, this is also after Shredder's escaped from the World War II blast, the other atomic bomb that he's seen. So right afterwards, he meets this guy, this brain, who says, just build me a body and I will give you, whatever you need. But you need to build me a body first. Jeez, I got so many things chatting at the same time. It's crazy. So let me close Skype. There you go. So Shredder's like, yeah, okay, I'll build a body for you, in exchange for all this technology, but he doesn't really want to give him the technology for a long time. So, eventually he does build it anyway. And he says, no more technology until you give me the body. And so they end up giving, Shredder gives him his body. And then once that happens, they start opening portals and they bring in the Technodrome. And the Technodrome is this crazy ship that, imagine you opened up and you're in, the Philadelphia experiment, and you ended up in a situation where the boat went through the wrong, place and you're half enveloped in sand or something. So a Technodrome is important because it can drill, and then this gets into the idea of, like the Boring Company and like space travel, like actual time space travel. And
those boring ones is in He-Man as well.
Yeah, totally.
Skeletor has one.
Skeletor has Technodrones. The Thundercats have a Technodrone, or at least the reptiles use one. There's a lot of shows that revolve around these giant drills that are underground. And, the thing is they're real, obviously. Like, we were looking into Howard Hughes. Howard Hughes got his fortune from his father before he made airplanes from drill bits so they could drill underground.
Oh, yeah, they got the technologies.
But there's a lot to be said about this idea of these realms, these luminary realms that people can visit. And there's a lot of people talking about stars and space travel, and I just want to mention that just because the realms of the real or the unreal, however you look at it, doesn't mean you can't go there. And a lot of people have been going there for a long time. It's funny, more people went to space before the 20th century than since. People used to go to space all the time, at least supposedly. Everyone's talking about space and these realms of the luminaries, and it's really only in the last 70 years that we've believed that you can't go to space unless you're in a submarine with a black pen so you can sign a contract or a gun that you can take what you want.
But people think of space as what NASA shows them, and in the old days, what they most likely talked about was the outer realms in here, in our world, inside our world, not up there outside, because literally there's nothing out there, and they never talked about that. If you they didn't believe in something up there outside. They believed in something outside the outer realms, as in outer space. We are inside the space of existence, and there's outer space rings, outer space realms next to us, outside and inside of our realm. And it's called a solar system because every single realm has a sun. So it's the solar system because there's a sun in every realm, every ring or dome world, whatever you want to call it. The dome is just, it's just the magnetic, the electromagnetic belt.
Skype open? Is that what that is? I think you have Skype open and it's beeping in the background. That must be what it is.
Who?
You, because
no,
you don't have Skype open.
I don't have anything beeping or anything at all.
So weird. Okay.
I don't understand what's beeping. I don't hear anything. But anyway, it's just the solar system is the system with the suns and the moons. But there's a sun in every realm. We have when you look at the sky and you see what you think is Mars. Mars is the sun of that realm next door. It's a sun, so it's a solar system, yeah. But it's not planets, it's suns and moons in the other realms. And you can go there, just not right now, or you are not allowed anyway if you knew how. But we will be able to go there, and that's why they are doing all that going to Mars crap, which is pure bullshit. They are not on Mars, and if they are, it's not what they show from NASA, the stupid little picture. They didn't even show anything. That's ridiculous. But Mars is the place they call Mars is the outer ring, the ring just outside of this one. And yes, they will be going there, but we won't be able to go there yet. We might in 2020 something. But maybe not. It depends if that's actually when.
Well, so you've heard about
everything will open.
The Japanese guy going to space with his NASA rocket or whatever. With the Japanese space, SpaceX artist.
SpaceX. Everything with an X is just ridiculous.
2023, he wants to bring. Hey, I have an X. Come on. 2023.
All right, I'm sorry. You're not that ridiculous.
No, are you kidding me? And the most ridiculous thing there is. But he's got this 2023 trip where he's gonna bring artists to space. I was just talking about this earlier today, and they're gonna bring a huge number of people. I'm gonna see if I'm gonna test you, man. Hold on. There we go.
Yeah.
I think there's something going on. So Maezawa won't go alone. He says he will choose 6 to 8 artists, from painters to sculptors to fashion designers and architects. I wonder if he's going to bring any tradesmen like stonecutters. That's a question. Nothing personal. So, but he also decided he's going to invite Elon Musk, but the space chief didn't exactly say yes. He's like, maybe we'll both end up on it. Dubious. It really depends on what his handlers say is okay, probably. But it's a nice idea. And the thing is, it's going to be, SpaceX silver rocket. Boom. Nope, that's not it. Where's the stainless steel one? Steel. It just went straight up stainless steel, and yeah. So it's going to be really pretty, like a lightsaber. And I if you didn't notice that this looks like a lightsaber yet, I just wanted to be there for you and see. Yes, it is.
Anyway, SpaceX, X symbolizes also the center of creation, the whole of the black sun, the entrance to the other side, the middle of that video we showed with the 2 magnetic sides, and the flower of life pattern in the middle with the little balls there. The X is the center of the existence. It's where everything comes from. So SpaceX would just be the space of the creation, the creator, the center.
So I don't want to. I've got a really great couple animes from the 70s I wanted to bring up also for people. One of them is Grandizer. There's another one I'm not even going to say aloud. You're going to have to go on the Patreon to see because it's too important to me, because it's the most important anime I ever had. I got Betamax as a child, so I'll save that other one. But Grandizer is important because it talks about UFO robots and this Tekkaman Mech Assault thing pretty early on. And then Lensman. So Lensman is a weird book series that was written by a guy named Elmer Doc Smith. and it's kind of up there with the Philip K. Dick stuff. But he wrote the Triplanetary System, and he also wrote a bunch of things about like the 19th century. In fact, if you want to look, I'm going to be trying to get my hands on as much of his stuff as possible, because he talks about his Old West stuff. I think actually gets into the Martian Chronicles, connects to the Tartary. Now I don't have any digital copies, so I haven't been able to like fully get into that, but I'm pretty sure I remember there being stuff about that at some point. And I was pretty into this old pulp sci-fi at some point, but they made a movie out of it in the 80s, and it's terrible, but it's wonderful. It's actually one of the best movies ever made, but it's nothing like the book. It's like a really different thing, but it's incredible. It kind of was the foundation for modern anime, because after they made this, they realized they could do something much better on their own than the thing that they were. It was, you know, divergent from trying to make movies out of American thing. Like they were no longer outsourcing; they were doing their own thing after this. But it led to Dragon Ball Z also, which, you know, so if you're interested in that kind of style or anything like the old Dragon Ball show, like the grandfather, you know, Master Roshi is a character. Originally, he's a young guy in Lensman. So that's something interesting. You know, if you want to see Master Roshi when he was just like living in space fighting, you know, and it's kind of like the Titan AE series, because you've got these like Lens Rangers, but what's weird is you've got these kind of Egyptian like Leviathan deities that run the universe and, you know, operate over large distances of space. But the time matters, because only so far they can be omnipotent. They can't be omnipresent, because light only travels at certain speeds. So it's pretty nuts. And like, this is from the 40s, but the anime is from the late 70s. But, you know, important stuff. Doc Smith. More questions?
What happened? I don't hear anything all of a sudden.
Do you not? Am I?
Oh, now I hear you. I didn't before.
I was worried. I was like, did I just say all that to no avail?
No, but for 5-6 seconds or something at least, I didn't hear anything. Now, yeah, there you are. You're just not saying something now. Oh no! I heard it all except for these 5-6 seconds.
Did we get Ben back? Ben, are you back here?
I just saw him.
I saw him. I don't hear him, but
no,
I'm sure he's around. I don't know. I think at some point we're gonna have to call this a close. Is there anything else you guys wanted to like cover?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Very, very bad, but we do.
Oh wait, very bad or very low?
It just sounds like you're far from the microphone, so there's like a room effect on.
Yeah.
It's just my mic has a switch on it. What was that series you were just showing with so it's like the demiurge things, and they were embodied in these.
So that's called Lens. That's called Lensman.
Lensman.
Lensman is written by Doc Smith, Elmer Doc Smith. I actually really like this. I had an animated. I have a poster from it somewhere, and I've got like a little action figure from it. Like, I was really into this when I was a kid, and it's not even my favorite. Like, there's another one I like even better. I literally won't even mention because I like it so much. But like, this one is about basically space-time rangers and this kid who becomes a space-time ranger on a cattle ranch in the future, sort of. It's like, it's, you know, and then eventually he has to save this spectrum of the space-time from these like Anubis like and Horus like deities, which are like Leviathans. Yeah. Yeah, there's some nut stuff in that one.
Crazy.
But yeah, and it gets more into my thing about like, people are all worried about lizard people. They're really not worried enough about bird people. You know what I mean? And it's really all about like, it's really all about bird people. Like, I'm honest when I'm saying that. Like, so
hey, what does that symbol mean? That hieroglyphic. What's the translation?
This one?
No, the third one. The bird.
This one?
Yeah, it's one of the hieroglyphics.
Oh, this is Horus, and it's you know, Horus is you know, you know, it's not about lizards. It's still about lizards, right? Like, you've got, but it's the, you know, it seems like the bird people use the lizard sun energy or something. The lizard energy for the bird people. You
It's
know,
got that circle. They showed in all of the wings, like the Sumerian and Persian and Akkadian wings.
and angels, right? The idea of birds.
So
And
it's
these
like
is funny. They have no wings. Interesting.
Look up Bitly. Look up Bitly, and then also I think Mini Cooper.
I mean, I never thought about that ever. That these are bird gods with often out wings. They almost
Yeah, of
always
course,
look,
yeah.
they look like
Yeah,
fallen
see
angels.
that one? Look
Yeah.
up Bitly, the luxury automaker logo.
But there's a lot
And
about
then
the
Mini
wings
Cooper
of
looks
the
like
wings and the symbols
logo.
not even being wings.
Right.
You know, it's also symbolism. See, you see that thing there in the top there? That looks like one of those electromagnetic power things, you know,
Or
from
glider, yeah.
ancient days. And the wings on it symbolizes the power of electromagnetism, because that comes from the pattern of a little electromagnetic explosion, or how to say, you know, it creates almost the same pattern as the double-headed eagle, you know. So it's a symbol of having the power of
Yeah.
Well, yeah, maybe
electromagnetism.
we should. I mean, obviously, I feel like people know about the Ankh being a symbol of power, right? Like you guys
Oh,
talked about
Yeah.
it's a turbine, it's an energy source, it spins, it makes light, it can store energy, like it can transceive energy, it can put out energy and bring in energy. It's also something that you could put on the back of a ship and it would spin. It can be
I
like,
have an Ankh. I have an Ankh right here, just next to me.
so it's a very powerful tool, and you know, I feel like people, and it's one of those things where like maybe you're in like a small town in Provo, Utah, and you get an Ankh because you want to be weird, and it's really not that weird, but it bothers some people still for some reason, but it shouldn't, because it's, you know, the thing is, it's just not, you know, if it does in your hometown, just get a symbol of a light bulb and start wearing it around your chest, or of a, you know, of a non-offensive practical thing, because that, you know, you can apply meaning to it. So there's that. Power of the Ankh. Let me look at your questions, guys. Man, people are all about that DMT thing. Well, I mean, the funny thing that Terrence McKenna said is that, like, you know, it's illegal, so, but it's in everyone's brain and everyone's making it, so everyone's holding. So I would say
You should post that famous, like, 1 hour, 17-minute lecture from Terrence McKenna.
Yeah.
About DMT, and it's like to a huge
I mean,
group.
the thing is, a lot of the people here are not super. I mean, I think about half of these people are not super interested in like, psychedelic experiences, which is like kind of fair, because it's only for half of reality for people who want to do that. See,
I haven't
Steve's
done
down.
any psychedelics since December 2011.
So I've been down to put stuff like there, but I mean, I've already gotten enough flack over posting like Slack particle accelerator stuff, and yeah, see, and then base. So then, but so everybody's everything, man. Like, you know, what's the point at that? If you call everybody a plant, well, yeah, I mean, what happens is they're gonna use whomever they can. Like, I'm getting monetized now, so clearly, like, commercials are something that facilitate them. They're like, great, we can get people to buy toasters or whatever the hell. Like, and, you know, I think you have some examples of people that really, like, they know that that freedom is not free, but like it's worse not to speak. So there's times when anybody says truth and you should listen to it for them. And Terrence McKenna has a lot of truth in him. So does Jordan Peterson. That's part of the thing about the Babylon period, is there's a lot of truth in everything. But there's no, you know, there's no reason why we need to say, like, I mean, I'm noticing when I show people my, like, the things that I'm researching, just in broadness, like, like only some people get it, and like a lot of other people are very upset because they don't. And so maybe it's like, you know, it's not necessary to like exclude people by just focusing on, you know, and also like you don't need drugs. I really want to push that.
It's good to separate your videos into different, like how you said, next time, you know, bring on different guests.
Yeah, we'll do game theory stuff. But I'm very.
What they want to watch.
I think one thing I wanted to say at some point about like Ken Kesey, and like you guys, if you should check out, like, if you're interested in that kind of thing, there's a documentary called what's it called, Magic Trip.
With a K.
Magic Trip is the it should have been with a K. It's a 2011 documentary that was made in 1964 to 66, and they took all of the footage that they had of Ken Kesey in the magic bus driving around, that if you've ever heard of this, like this is when the CIA gave these kids acid, told them like they weren't going to let them do it, and they just turned around and walked away and left it with them. And then they started following them around the country and making sure they didn't get arrested while they influenced and impacted society with this acid culture.
Experiment.
So you guys really need to see this if you want to know about how the CIA like tagged and released acid heads in American T-shirts, American flag T-shirts, and invented tie-dyes. It's all there. But
yeah, and it's all documented, real.
Yeah, totally.
Hallelujah.
Very, very quietly mentioned the government did it at the end, and they kind of just say, "Oh, but it was so cool, right?" Because
Hey man, if I was in the CIA, I would do that.
Well, some people I've been talking to recently make the point, like with Moby, that's a very eclectic group of people. All kinds of people with different opinions. So I'll give you that. But I doubt it was so. Obviously, they knew that LSD was important for shifting the culture for some reason. But they couldn't just give it to people in a school or in a prison or in like a hospital under a black light. They needed to get them out in the streets. So they took this guy, Ken Kesey, he was at Menlo Park. He was a Stanford kid. He was he was an Olympic gymnast and a ventriloquist, right? Mm-hmm. So they took that guy, they made him crazy, and they had him, and then now he sells that mac and cheese. Annie's Mac and Cheese. I think that's his company.
They probably overdosed him because you can fry your brain by overdosing on that
shit. He's actually one of the less crazy of the Kesey group. I mean, because of Kesey himself, he said, if you get the message, put down the phone and get on the mission, go back to the work. Whereas, he had people on the, the bus, like, let's see, what was his name again? I'm trying to remember the names of the people on the bus, like Nick Cassidy, right? Nick Cassidy. Yeah, Nick Cassidy. Nick was a beatnik, and he did a lot of speed and cathinones and crazy uppers made from different things. And he was a military brat and psychedelic countercultural movement, and they found him afterwards dead on the border. I used to live in his house, actually. Well, he lived in the house I lived in at one point, but he had been found dead on the other side of the border in Mexico in 1968. And it was, I think, back then, like long years ago when he lived at the house I lived at, they used to just project this footage and he would rant about what they saw, and so there's recordings of that. So I'd gotten to hear some. Yeah, because this place I used to live in, Santa Cruz, that was one of the test houses for this back in the 70s and 60s. I mean, and so, but in the 70s, that's when the Warlocks were there, which is the Grateful Dead, and so they tie into that. But Nick Cassidy, it's really, if you want to look in, this is what started freaking me out, because when I was a kid, I thought, oh, cool, California pop culture, it's so exciting, right? We're so different because we're the first ones to try this. But then you start finding out you're not. The military are financing, and even now, where are these drugs coming from? They're coming from universities, or they're coming from overseas, and these synthetic factories. It's very much not just being made by some kid somewhere. Unless it's like pot or something, you're talking about stuff that's made by the military or by paramilitary pharmaceutical companies. Yeah. So it's a serious thing you should consider, not just think it's just so trivial, I feel like,
If they have the ability to make, VX gas and all these chemical weapons, advanced chemical weapons, and they can easily make drugs that interact with the human brain system plus all kinds of.
Yeah, I mean, it's something I kind of dig about the Mormons, honestly, is their whole not doing the drugs too much, because but you've heard that other thing. You put two Mormons. If you're gonna go on a boat with a Mormon, don't bring any beer because he'll drink all your beer. But if you go on a boat with two Mormons, bring as much beer as you want because they won't drink one in front of each other. So there's a lot to be said for a monk in isolation is broken by his first temptation, and so maybe somebody who's used to being tempted knows how to say no better, but. You can do. I also wanted at some point talk about ergot poisoning because there's a thing called the dancing plague. Since you guys are talking about psychedelic experiences, the dancing plague, the choreomancy is, probably one of the most important. I've got a script about this. If anybody wants to kickstart a movie, it should be The Dancing Plague. But
And
I
it
want
seems
to,
like it only affected women,
no,
or mostly did.
no, it affected women a lot. But what happened was it affected women first because women cooked first. See, this is the thing, and I want to make my movie about it someday because of this. Is that it would be a great example of the scientific method. Because first thing that happens is the women get sick and crazy, and you've got plague already. You got people that are dying or whatever. So they wait to burn the bodies a few days, and the rats, they flee after you've been eating them bodies for a few days. They flee into the streets during the smoke of the burning, and then they go to the grain piles and they get people more sick. And there's already ergot, and people are getting hysteria, mass hysteria, start dancing. But the priests don't know what's going on, so they're trying to research it, and they send word. And by the time the word comes back, from Rome, the priests have eaten the bread too. So they're crazy. And so, then the rich people goes, the women and then the rich people. And then the last people to go were the very poor who had no food. They were the ones who stayed the least crazy for the longest. And then, that would be the thing. You got the entire village is burned down by the Catholic Church who shows up, and they're like, what is going on in Strasbourg? And these two kids flee. And then, when they leave, they take a loaf of bread, the last loaf of bread in the town. And so they're completely sober because they've been starved for the last week while everyone's hungry. And so they end up in the streets, and then they watch this flagellant path walk by while they're eating their ergot and start tripping. And that's that medieval acid trip that you guys are looking for, pretty sure.
It sounds like The Last of Us.
Sounds like a kind of
I do got a lot of scripts. One of these days I want to make one. I also have one about that we were talking about earlier, the government research chemicals and testing. It's kind of a modernization of the Ken Kesey story I wanted to do.
One with the bus?
Yeah, but mine's a little bit more like about the internet than a bus. But
that guy, Carrie Cassidy of Avalon, how do you spell it? Is her name the same spelling? Cassady? Why? I think it might have an I. I'm just wondering.
Yeah, so Scott Thatcher, by the way, you were talking about the CIA back. You should look into the fact that the Grateful Dead, who were called the Warlocks originally, Jerry Garcia cut off his finger in order to perform a magic promise to the devil that he could play music. And it comes from after the Jimmy Page, right? Jimmy Page from Led Zeppelin.
Yeah, of course.
He said he didn't want to do a video about he'd made several satanic Jimmy Page satanic.
Really, Roger?
No. And so if you know how Jimmy Page lost his ability to make music, it's because he made this movie, Lucifer Rising. He refused to make the second one, and after he refused to make Lucifer Rising sequel, then Jimmy Page lost all his magical powers and his musical powers, and so
that's insane.
Yeah, but it's
good way to know. Holy shit!
But it's a Kenneth Angers movie. If you want to get into like the whole, gate of the pizza, like Kenneth Angers is nuts.
I've never heard of that. That blows my mind, man.
Yeah. And then that connects you to the Warlocks, and when Jerry Garcia finger. Let's look that up real quick.
Wait. So what band is Jerry Garcia?
The Grateful Dead.
Yeah. So
the Warlocks.
7-8 months ago, me and KS were talking about the Grateful Dead. Their album covers are insane. And
the Rose Skull, the skull, Rose
lost. They're the people who at their publishing, what's it called, record company, they were more involved in making the covers of those albums than the band was.
That's another thing, when you get into Kenneth Angers and the designers, because they were all interested in, they were all occultists. Yeah. They look into the Hotel California.
This is serious stuff.
But the thing about the Grateful Dead is this is serious stuff. People don't really take the Grateful Dead seriously because they're hippies, and it's totally fine, man. But they're not they're just hip. They're just hip. And they're hip because they lived in a San Francisco on 19th Avenue, just across from the Freemason Scotch Rite, in the old abandoned insane asylum that they turned into the Grateful Dead acid house. And like they're on payroll, like straight up with the Dalai Lama. You know about the Dalai Lama being on the CIA payroll too, I assume.
I didn't know that, but
Yeah, but some people check that out. Look into payroll stuff. And
there's like a real Dalai Lama who's kind of like it's like they worship their own one,
Are you
and
talking
it's the
about
one
Thich Nhat
that the world knows. And the one the world knows is like eventually gonna die out.
Yeah, well, the one I like
Oh,
is
for
Thich Nhat Hanh. If we're gonna go Buddhism ever, and I'm not saying we gotta, but like
Oh,
Thich Nhat Hanh is
there's
kind of
the
cool
one.
'cause
Yeah.
he's Vietnamese and he seems like the Lama everyone
I
first.
really like Alan Watts, but I have a friend who's been all over the world. He's in the military actually, but he introduced me to Thich Nhat Hanh and like changed my life. So
Someone, I'm sorry that your daughter was in an experimental center. This is the kind of thing that we're trying to warn people about because of that. 'Cause it's like, hey man, like you should be fully aware of whatever you're putting yourself into or someone else into. They don't want you to know, so you'll make an uneducated decision, and it's not cool.
What was that? Who are you reading?
Someone said that their daughter was put into some sort of a
Oh, there.
experimental thing.
I
And
don't
as
know.
you know, that's like really
we
common.
saw Stranger Things.
Yeah, Stranger Things. I mean, they're trying to
When you were
popularize
talking,
it. Like, what's
When you
that
were talking
movie, Hannah?
Uh-huh.
You guys seen Hannah?
I haven't yet.
Hannah is very much like the better case scenario for the Stranger Things kid.
Yeah.
So it's a kid who was supposed to be raised to be raped and sacrificed, but instead became like a super killer assassin like her parents.
It's also
Down to
Firestarter.
her killers. Yeah, it's very much like It's very
Firestarter.
much like Firestarter. It's a lot. It's better than
These
Firestarter,
movies are all the time thing.
but I would say Firestarter, guys. Also,
Humans have superpowers.
super on it. You got to see Firestarter. In fact, it's all about taking. I think they take alpha methyltryptamine, and then it makes them psychics, and then their kid is, the government program, and their kid is this, and then these pedophiles are hunting her down that work for the government, and like they're at these old bases in
They
Washington.
don't really work for the government. It's like they own the government.
Yeah, they're old family kind of.
They own the government. There's so
See-
much stuff to cover on that.
When we talk about DMT, people, most of you know, but you gotta get off Colgate and all that shit. You gotta get off, drinking and brushing your teeth in fluoride. Fluoride is extremely bad for your pineal gland and will make your production of DMT totally destroy. It will actually pretty much kill it all. You have almost nothing left.
Well, everyone always talks about DMT, and I'm only going to say this once, and then we're done with saying this. But I think you guys need to look into A, and that's about T. All right, that's all I wanted to say. I want to be very cryptic about that, and I don't want to leave it at that. But I think we should move on to another subject, which would be like how to do Kundalini breathing to get your melatonins up, like because you can do that, and that would probably be to like experience a maximum level of decalcification of your pineal gland is like running and watching your brain grow
and alkalize yourself.
Alkalize yourself. Do the sprouted almond milk. It's super easy. You can. I'm in California, so there's a lot of almonds, but there's other ways to do it, and you can find them. Make sure you sprout them if you're going to do that, like because you want the the feeling of an activated seed. But
what's it called? That shit? Baking soda, but not the cheap shit. The actual source of the name they call baking soda. What is the chemical name?
Sodium bicarbonate.
Yes, sodium bicarbonate. But it gotta be it gotta be the real natural one, not the fake ones.
In Europe, not nearly as popular here for some reason.
Yeah,
it's very good.
The ones you buy for baking and stuff, that's called E500. It's a poison. It's not a poison, but it's a chemical version, and it even contains aluminium in most cases. And it's not good for you. Keep away from that. Find the natural version, the real version, the real natural version of it.
This is really interesting because they'll take things really healthy and they'll start selling you poison versions of them.
Yes, and they do that with most things like powder stuff. It's always crappy version.
We're about 10 minutes to 3 in the Pacific time, and I think I gotta go to bed because I still have Sorry, guys, but I'm really
But the
glad
real
we did
version
it.
of that can
We're
even,
gonna-
directly kill cancer cells.
We're gonna have to do a thing on foods. I was realizing. I mean, I want to teach you guys about sprouting seeds. Like you just pick your nuts and your seeds, and you put water, and you let them overnight, and by the next day, they're activated. And you don't want to eat anything unless you've activated it, because it's basically asleep, waiting for itself to become a tree. It's a seed that's going to become a tree. Like you have to understand the difference between a mustard seed and the kingdom of heaven. So it's worth sprouting your seeds. And the other thing I would say is make sure that you try looking for all of your food's actual ingredients. Like we just said, don't use aluminum products if you can avoid it. In fact, you can. So you know better. And I'm looking through these questions. Any more questions you guys have before we cut off?
I got one.
What you got?
About micro bubbles.
Micro bubbles.
Bubbles, nano bubbles. I found this through a guy. Well, on Facebook, he posted about it. It's called micro bubbles research, I guess.
I'm just playing with my friend's little son.
I don't know how to
3
find
with
it.
bubbles. We were all about bubbles recently.
Jason Verbelli, he was posting research about it, like actual scientific research from the university. This stuff makes plants grow 33% faster.
Right. Yeah. This is a big part of the Victor Schauberger thing. Is once you oxygenate water, the point is it makes it easier for oxygen to attach to the iron or whatever is holding the oxygen. So it works pretty well.
This is brand new research I've never seen before. I don't know if you're gonna find much, but I'll definitely find it one day and I'll post the link. I'll come back.
Mention colloidal silver water as something very important for healing yourself, and we gotta add that. Just hit it up. That will kill pretty much all viruses and diseases in your body.
Bacteria is antimicrobial.
And yeah, it's very effective. If even something like what was it called? What's the latest stupid diseases they said was in Africa and all kinds of places. What was the last one?
You mean Ebola?
Yeah, Ebola is just one thing. Even that would be killed by colloidal silver. All of those ones they keep scaring you with. They're not that dangerous. Only when you don't know how to kill them.
Well, I don't want to do this one yet. At some point, we're going to have to talk about chaos magic, and we're going to have to talk about Ebola and what happened on 4chan that made it possible.
Something came up when I was at a system failure there. When I came back on and I went to join, I checked, where you're at, and they have this game called The Division, and I think it's a Tom Clancy game. It's insane. The Division, it comes out on March 15th. So Pi Day is March 14th, right? 3.14.
3.14, March 14th Pi. It's just weird. It's weird.
Yeah, once you saw that flat curve, man, I want to
rebel against your government, take down the Trump presidency.
What?
Oh my God, your microphone just turned good, Ben.
Yeah, right when you say the weirdest thing in the whole thing. All right, well, I think I'm going to cut this at the Einstein field equation. I think we got all the questions that we want. We're going to do something soon on aerated water and Australian farming, because you can see how 2 to 3 times larger plants with 20% as much water. So that's real. But I was going to say, anything else you guys want to say before we cut off?
I'm gonna write something in the chat right now, and I think we should take up those subjects as well next time. Focus a little bit on all this stuff that heals diseases and viruses and stuff, so people they know how to keep to not die literally.
Yeah, I mean, I've been trying to tell people about colloidal metals. Obviously, really quickly, someone told me that colloidal metals aren't perfect. And I should have mentioned this, is that I had a boss once that went crazy off eating 3% of his body weight in gold and all these herbal supplements. Because I told him, it's cool to have, the stuff. So he went to the store and bought all of them. And then he drank as much of it. He's like, okay, you can have up to 3%. So I'm going to go right to the peak. And yeah, he ended up driving around in like a stolen Audi with a machine gun while the helicopters were chasing him,
Are
as
you sure that
as
wasn't
one
something-
does in LA. So be careful with. And I'm not saying that that's colloidal metal's fault, but yeah, metal poisoning makes you crazy. So don't just overdo anything. Is all, you know. Be
It
careful.
gotta be made right,
Yeah.
and you can't
Yeah.
mix it in dirty water and have it being
I
discolored and all
hate
kinds of
that you
stuff.
have to tell people that you have to do something right and not wrong these days, but you do, and so just keep it in mind. Also, I don't take flu shots.
Yeah, don't
please.
take vaccines. Don't even fight that talk.
Hey,
You know, you
have
can
you
look at
ever,
what's in them.
It's interesting when they say that George Washington didn't like to shake hands. I mean, considering he was, you know, a Mason, right? Like it's the whole thing. But,
Germaphobe, germs, germs.
you know, that's interesting.
What do you say, Ben?
Of like the silver spoon thing, like how it's all born.
yeah, silver spoon keeps you healthy.
Yeah, that's the silver particles again. Silver.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Silverware.
so they at some level understood that silver was safer to eat on than lead or copper.
Yeah.
Yeah, it kept you
The
healthier.
masses were eating on mostly lead.
And they fry all their food in copper.
And then,
Yeah,
when
that's
they
something we'll have to get into. Also, is
The
how they
royals still
knew.
do that. The
Yeah.
royals have silver, fries their food in copper and
I'm not
eats
that-
with silver.
I'm not royal. I just like copper. But
Yeah, but the royals and the elites, they know.
I mean, hey, I'm not elite. I just like copper bottom stuff. I don't know.
I have copper
my
and silver
dad,
stuff
my
in my
dad
kitchen.
was always against Teflon, so we just never went to Teflon. So we just keep, I mean, ever. And then once we found out that Teflon was bad for you and that everyone's mutated by it, my dad just got this wide, like, I told you so. Yeah, you know. So I don't know. Copper works, man. It keeps things healthy. I've got a lot of copper in general. I've always been pro copper in this weird way. Like I have a water heater that I got from Japan just because it's copper. So
Yeah.
Copper's my favorite element other than gold because it's the same. It
Yeah,
has
copper's legit.
chemical properties. Copper, silver, and gold are all in the same group.
Well, okay, really quickly, since I got there's one more thing I should say. We're doing Tartary missed. Something after we got into there's in the Wizard of Oz, okay? So we're talking about Wizard of Oz because it's theosophical. And one of the things about Oz, and I'm gonna put this in my video next to you, but if you know about Oz, if you know what's the letter that comes before Z, guys? What's the letter that comes before Z, guys?
Depends on you mean C or you mean set.
I mean Z. What comes before Z?
That's why.
Y. All right. What comes before O?
M. I said
N. You have NY, right? So you got New York. And what's the letter that comes after? What's the letter that comes after Z? Is A. And what's the letter that comes before O? Is L. So you have OZ and you have LA. And so OZ and LA actually represent in between the two lands of Oz, the two pillars in theosophy. I'm having a really hard time finding the piece that I was working on about. Here we go. Yes. So it's an encrypted message. And, because he was all about theosophy, we know that it was like Madame Blavatsky was, encouraging bound. But if you add the value of one, you get NY and you get LA. So, but where's in between NY and LA? Well, Kansas, and Kansas is not, this small place. It's very much known for Geneva architecture. But the weird thing is, we know about the number. Oz is a value in, Oz has a value of 77.
Osmium?
Well, yeah, I gotta get to, okay, Oz means strength in Hebrew. And actually it has a value of 77. And that's how we know that it really means fortification or fortress. It's actually that it means star force. I mean, star fort is what.
Yeah, look, that's that.
Yeah.
That's like Principia Discordia. One of the first ones I showed was.
Right. And I was thinking about it earlier. I wasn't sure if I would bring it up because I was like, I don't know, because I want to make this video about it. But 7 and 77, you get the 5 is a part of the numerology.
Yeah,
so it connects.
7 is 14. This whole thing's based on. It'd be a topic for a different video, but if you deal with prime numbers and you understand how pi works, Marty Leeds does, he explains everything right there. Look, 192.22. So 9, 10, 12, 322. 322. Osmium, Genesis 322. Well, look at the atomic weights with the most common isotope, 192.22.
Yeah.
Atomic weight units.
Well, so here's the thing I was going to bring up. I thought that was kind of interesting. Not to say that the numbers aren't invaluable, and I'm going to get in. I'm glad you said that because now I can get into osmium too. But what's interesting is, iridium is 77, but he talks a lot about the Emerald City. And the emerald, it has chromium in it, but it also has vanadium. Vanadium is what makes emeralds. It's 23rd element, right? And 23, obviously. Yeah. And 50 is a very important Kabbalistic number. So it makes sense that this, mixing with chromium, that, you get the, this vanadium city, and the power of Vanadia comes from Freya. Freya is Vanadia. So, it just gets back into this idea of the theosophical value. And also, this is kind of funny that Madame Blavatsky actually told a story about this hurricane twister, and a family descended into a cellar to escape a house and ended up in a magical world with dwarves and etc. Yeah. So Wizard of Oz is essentially based on a story from, Blavatsky, only it's very well done. Don't get me wrong. I like Baum's, lyricism, but it's important to know about that, and to know that, what he's talking about is the difference between the Old World League, the owl, owl, and there would not be giants, by the way. And the New World League, the New World Order, rather, is not a league, it's an order. But that gets into this idea because we're talking about Alison Foster Bailey. And Alice Foster Bailey, great invocation. So some people really into Lucis Trust and the theosophical stuff. Well, one thing I would say really
that one there. Yeah.
Make sure you look into the Shambhala of Light, great invocation, because the UN was, if you trust the UN, I don't know what to do about you, but they are founded upon the great invocation, and it kind of makes the point from the point of life. I don't even know if I should read it aloud. That's how I feel about the great invocation. But it has a lot to do with the known God, not the unknown God, but the one that is worshipped around the world by many, which is the Babylonian, controller Eden, and Leal from Sumerian. Yeah. So, all right, I think I pulled out.
One thing, you heard the Rose Cross Order? You had convocation of the Rose Cross Order. They use the same symbol as that invocation of that thing there. I mean, your last search name. But cool.
Very well. All right. Well, I'm praying for all of you that you stay happy and healthy and are inspired to do way more interesting things than anything destructive, and that people remind you that they love you. And that's really what I got to say. So I love you guys, and I'll see you soon. Thanks for watching. Yeah. And thanks for being here, Chaos, and thanks for being here, Ben. And we'll do this soon.
People, you should pray for each other, not pray on each other.
Ooh, yeah.
That's how it's supposed to be.
Have you ever talked about your pre-20... It's 2019. Have you talked about your pre-2019 stuff before?
Me or KS?
Oh, sorry, Andreas.
Yeah, what do you mean? Like the stuff I did before this year? Like who I was before this year?
Yeah, I know that, intro, but South American and all.
Yeah, I think we're going to very soon do something talking about Cinco Labs. I think I want to bring up Cinco Labs soon in terms of this technology. But let's take it for another level. All right, love you guys. Ciao.
Yeah.
See ya.